Welcome to Two Giant Goofballs, a New York Giants podcast. Are you a goofball that loves Giants football? If so, sit back and relax as we talk about the team that both excites and frustrates us so much. And now, here are your goofball hosts, Drew and Rob.
Welcome, fellow goofballs, to Two Giant Goofballs, the New York Giants podcast. I am Drew, joined as always by...
I'm me, Rob, and we also got a friend on the show.
Oh, yes, we do. We have friends, people. See, we have so many friends. We're friendly people. Everyone loves us. Say hello, everybody, to the third goofball of the evening here, Andrew Faubert of the North Sports Dynasty. What's up, man?
How we doing, gentlemen? Thank you for having me on tonight.
And I'm going to give everybody a fair warning here. I know you guys are used to our goofiness. We call ourselves goofballs for a reason here. We are a little out there, we're a little insane. It's okay. You all listening, you're all insane as well, so it's okay. This man, as I point in the wrong direction, I wish we get the mirrored image here in the camera. This man, he may make us look sane. I'm just saying.
Listen, you get me on a Monday. It's like, hey.
After St. Patty's Day, no less.
Listen, I don't drink, but I do the equivalent in other stuff that's green. So, and
there we go.
Cilantro, whatever.
Yeah, the legal stuff.
Brussels sprouts, asparagus.
Yes, Brussels sprouts.
I'm big on the artichokes myself.
I live in New Jersey. Everything that you want that's green's legal. So,
what about you, Drew? What about you? Do you indulge? Do you know?
I did when I was younger, but I don't anymore. But
no, where are you at?
Get a hold of? Huh?
Like, is it legal where you're at? Or?
No, but when is it ever stop people?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, seriously. Medically.
Yeah.
It's not. I also don't indulge. Just but I dabble, but I don't really indulge.
You dabbled. You're novice. All righty, guys. So today we got a lot to go over here. We got 20 wide receivers. So, we like to go over 10 to 15 people typically in each draft and each position here. This is probably the most loaded position in the entire draft here, guys. So we're going 20 full receivers here. And the scary thing is we're going into we barely went into the fourth round of receivers, at least in our opinion, where they're going to get drafted here. We didn't go down until here's somebody the 6th, 7th. We didn't get the Bryce Ford Wheaton kind of people that are going to be undrafted and picked up. That's how many receivers are legitimate people to make a splash here in the NFL coming into this draft. So all you Giants fans go, we still don't have a number one. We still don't have a number one. Huh?
Because we talked about how many good quarterbacks are coming in this draft.
Yeah, but when you say a lot of good quarterbacks, there's 6. We're really looking at 6 good quarterbacks. 7 if you want to include Spencer Rattler.
How many of these receivers make each other go hand in hand? How many good quarterbacks are actually going to come out? How many good wide receivers are going to come back out of this? Because they complement each other in the long run.
Is that vodka on that water bottle? Just saying.
No.
You had to sniff it to verify.
Nurse.
All righty. So we're going to start off here at the very bottom, guys, because if you want to find out who's number one, you got to wait to the very end. And let's be honest here. I think you all probably think you know who's number one, but there's been a battle lately, guys. There's been a battle for who is number one. This is not I'm telling you right now, for all you guys to think that a certain junior is going to be number one on everybody's board. That's not the case right now. It's 50-50. It's getting that way really quickly, and Nabers is really catching up there. So let's start off at the very bottom. Let's find out who we have on the top here. So we're starting off with Malik Washington. Oh, yes. The little tiny Malik Washington here. I mean, tiny, he's like the size of a teddy bear. This guy's 5'8", 191 pounds, guys. 23 years old. Played his first 2 seasons over at Northwestern. Played his last season over at Virginia. In 12 games, 110 receptions, 1,426 yards, 9 touchdowns, 3 rushes for 7 yards. Ended up breaking Herman Moore's single-season receiving yard record at school there. Now, if you guys don't know, I'm a little bit of an oldie here, okay? If y'all don't know who Herman Moore is, first off, I suggest you look him up. Barry Sanders was not the only stud Detroit had in the 90s. Herman Moore was a beast when he wanted to be at that point. He had some seasons that was like one of the top 3 receivers in the NFL. He was that good. So do some history on him if you don't know that guy. But yeah, he broke his records there. Last year in 22, over at Northwestern, 12 games, 65 receptions, 694 yards, 1 touchdown, 9 rushes, 16 yards. Very explosive, twitchy, good hands. Comes back to the QB on scrambles well. I mean, that's one of those things that people think that comes second nature. Some guys are just better at that. They have that, like, spidey sense that like tingles and lets them know the quarterback's in trouble. This guy has that. Breaks tackles actually pretty well for his size too, which you wouldn't think at his size he'd have that ability. Just got a little bit of, yeah, he's got that Mighty Mouse mentality there. And I mean, the cons in this guy are all going to be size. Can't box out. Bad catch radius. If you're depending on him to block in the run game, you're in a lot of trouble. I mean, these are the kind of things you kind of expect. But we've seen it last year with guys like Tank Dell coming into the league at that point and doing pretty well. There's a spot in the NFL for this guy.
And especially going forward, because like if you look at the NFL, and especially like Drew and I covered this last year when it came into the draft, like a lot of these guys came in small, and we're like, how is teeny tiny, like how these guys going to excel in the NFL? But they're so explosive, so fast. Like these big guys just can't catch up. And if you have that guy that just catches the ball and just runs far away from any of the defenders, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, I mean, and they get lost. It's like you don't even see them because everybody else is so much bigger. It's like, does someone's child's running the field? Yeah. That's what it turns out to look. It's like, now keep in mind we compared him to Tank Dell there a second ago. I did 5'10", 165. That's Tank Dell. So he's definitely a little bit shorter than Tank Dell, but he's also a little stockier. So interesting combo there.
But it's not saying much. When you're talking NFL size, that that's
listen, 5'10" is not unheard of for a wide receiver to succeed. You know, Steve Smith, I'd have to look up his height, but it wasn't he'd have to be a tall guy. There's plenty of guys out there at that point that are shorter and have succeeded. I don't think I've seen 5'8". I think that seems a little shorter than what I've seen. So if you're a guy who has that set in stone, like this is the size for a receiver kind of mentality, you're going to hate this guy. If you're a guy who just likes watching tape and likes to be people doing explosive things, you're going to love this guy. That's what it boils down to.
Especially if you like the speedy, slot straight guys. Like, this guy just out the field runs the ball.
Well, especially if you're a fantasy football guy too. Like he fits the mold perfectly for like the Tank Dell situation. Going forward, and he's got 30 pounds on him. Like Tank Dell was your fantasy, guess you say manager there for about 7 weeks, and then he went down, and now his value is just sitting there on your bench waiting to go for next year. But this guy, again, 30 pounds on him. If he goes to somewhere like the Rams, I doubt he'd go to the Bucs just because they probably got a slot receiver, but you add him to a place that's got 2 big wide receivers already, even like Philly or something like that, and he'll fit right in, and he'll be explosive when he needs to be.
Yeah. Well, you said the Rams, that might be the best, maybe not the best, but like that's a really good spot for him, like you said, because they've already got a lot of talent in other positions.
Are you saying they've picked up good receivers at LA, like Puka Nacua or someone?
Puka.
Listen, I still claim, and I'll claim this to the day I die, I never heard anybody really talking about Puka Nacua before the draft. But Rob and we said this guy's going to – we didn't say he's going to do it that good, but we said this is the guy who blocks well. This is the guy who does the little things. He works hard. This is the kind of guy you draft in the mid-round and hope he pans out because he's going to put the work in. Yeah, he put the damn work in all right. Woo. Yeah. What a rookie season.
Like that.
All right. Let's get into number 19, Brendan Rice. Oh yes, and you think you hear that last name and you think of the days of San Francisco and Joe Montana, not to be confused with Joe Montana if you're Rob, because he likes to confuse the two. But yeah, this is his son. This is his son, guys. Brendan Rice, the son of the great Jerry Rice, the greatest.
Montana cheat on Rice?
No. What happened here? What? Montana tea on Rice? What are you talking?
Yeah.
Jerry Reese? What?
What? Yeah. No, not Jerry. We don't talk about Jerry Reese on the show.
Say.
6'2", 208 pounds, 28 years old. Played the last 2 years at USC. Played the 2 years before that over at Colorado. Obviously, pre the Dion days and the bad days of Colorado. Last year, 12 games, 45 receptions, 791 yards, 12 touchdowns. That's a pretty decent TD total there. 22, he was 39 receptions, 611 yards and 4 touchdowns. So not as quite the touchdown machine there. Keep in mind, though, that this guy basically became the number 1 receiver at USC this year because they lost a certain Jordan Addison who lit it up down in Minnesota there, don't you know? And all of a sudden,
there's a wicked pisser.
All of a sudden, there he is, the number 1 receiver there with Caleb Williams, who, let's be very frank, is not an easy quarterback to work with if you're a receiver, because this guy doesn't sit in one spot. He moves around like crazy. It's like he's got ants in his pants. He's in the quarterback position there. The guy can't sit still. And, when you're a receiver, that matters. You have to see where he's at. You have to go, okay, is it coming from the left? Is it coming from the right? Do I have to come back to this guy? Same we talked about a minute ago, Malik Washington had that ability. You need that ability if you're going to play with a guy like Caleb Williams, because you never know where he's going to be at. Yeah. Pros on Brandon. Good size, explosive, good at playing off script, as we said. Good blocker as well. And I have a thing for guys who block at the receiver position, because it tells me they're a team player. It tells me they're a hard worker, and tells me they care about the craft overall, not just catching the ball, the craft of being a wide receiver.
It's a big difference.
Exactly. Cons: lacks quick stops, especially in curls. You'll see it where it's almost like he takes like 5 steps to turn around when he's got to turn around in a quick one there. Not great at running catch routes as well. So if you do a quick 5-yard and then he's got to pop off and go, again, he's got issues with those quick moves like that. He's also been a little inconsistent on his performances. He's that guy who will have like almost disappear for a couple games and then be the MVP of the next game after that. You kind of like to see it a little more steady, especially in college, because you got to remember, everything you see good in college goes down a level when you go in the pros. Whenever you see bad in college, it's, again, going to go down a level in the pros there. But this is a guy that a lot of guys think could be like a second receiver, like a perfect Batman kind of, I've said perfect Robin kind of guy in a lot of offenses there. And I'm not so sure if I have him that high necessarily, but I do think this is a legitimate receiver in this league. That's going to be a guy who probably be, to me, I think like a 500-600 yard kind of guy where he's going to max out in this league at that point there. What do you guys think?
That also depends who he's sitting next to. Like, if
of course, obviously,
yeah. Like,
also who's throwing the ball is part of that too.
Yeah, you turn around and say, he goes to KC. You think he's going to be a 500-600 yard receiver? Like,
actually, I do. Because I think they have big.
They do spread the ball around. They do give it to Cousins.
Hollywood Brown's gonna have his best season ever coming up. Telling you,
yeah, possibly will. Yeah,
fantasy owners.
It was really funny.
Ready to draft him.
Yeah, but if he goes to another team, we'll say Buffalo.
Mm-hmm. And that's a good spot for him. Actually, he'd be a perfect potential replacement for Gabe Davis.
Yeah, he has 750 yards, 800 yards. Easy.
Yeah. Well, I still don't know if I go that high, but they don't need a guy that high because they have a good tight end now for the first time in, Josh Allen's career.
Put him on, he was Caleb Williams' safety blanket. So, if the Bears are sitting there in the 4th or even 5th round and he's still on the board, you want your number 1 overall future Hall of Fame, possibly quarterback, to feel as comfortable and stay as long as he possibly can and sell you as many damn seats as he possibly can. So I would take a flyer if I were the Bears in the 4th or 5th round, and you'd probably still get 500 or 600 yards out of him too, since Mooney's gone.
Yeah, you think he's going to last that long? I'm thinking like third. I think it's like 3rd round he's going to go. Like towards the end of the 3rd is where I think he's going to end up going.
I mean, personally, I think what's going to end up happening with these wide receivers is because there's so many of them, a lot of the teams that we think are going to grab wide receivers in either the tail end of the first or the early second are probably going to wait till the end of the second or early third to start grabbing guys that we think would be going in the second round. So you might get like the Buffalo Bills getting someone like, Lad McConkey in like the third round. And you're going to be like, for crying out loud. You know what I mean? Like, or Xavier Worthy going in the mid-second to something like the Chiefs, and people are like, great. So they didn't have to use it first, but they trade up in the second, and now they got 2 Tyreek Hills essentially.
See, I think what's going to end up happening is once the first person kind of takes that run at a receiver, there's going to be a panic. I feel like there's a wide receiver panic every year, and it all takes that first team.
Also, there's draft positional tails that go on every year. You see someone that like needs a quarterback. It's just like if you play fantasy football,
Yep. Oh yeah.
You got to like the first guy that goes, I got a quarterback. Everyone goes, crap. Yeah. And they just don't take the best player at the position.
Yeah.
Nope.
I mean, every year though, it seems like wide receivers that spot where all of a sudden like 10 to 15 picks in a row go wide receiver because it just makes a run of them real quick. Everybody's like, oh my God, I'm not going to get one. Like, and they just freak out.
Yeah. Well, and that's the guy you want.
That's the thing with this draft is there's like 6 to 8 depending on who you kind of what you were saying earlier with the quarterbacks, depending on who you like. There is 6 to possibly 8, but then the tackles and the wide receivers are so deep in this draft where that's where it starts to become like if you're a GM and you're like, all right, I can have Malik Nabers or Olu Fashanu. It's like
Nabers in a heartbeat.
Depending on who you are, if you're the Giants, you Nabers and Wandell.
I'm actually not a Fashanu fan, but we'll get into that one on Thursday, guys. The spoiler alert on that one. I think he's overrated personally. So,
well, hello, Mr. Fancy Spoily.
I said it. Listen, I said it. Just saying, we were right on CJ Stroud. I'm still holding that one too. We actually had a pretty good record last year. I went back and looked at some of our stuff we said. And we were pretty good on a lot of the stuff too. So I was a little feather in our cap there at that point there.
I'm the one that said the Panthers will go 10-7 and win the South.
I said the same thing. I really did.
Did you?
I did. So I'll give you that one. I was definitely wrong on that. I thought CJ Stroud would be better than Bryce Young. I didn't think that Bryce Young would be as bad as he was. I didn't think that. I thought he'd be more of a game manager kind of guy. The defense would kind of take over, and because it's such a crappy division, they'd kind of squeak it out. That's what I thought. But again, this is why we rest our laurels on our rights because there's plenty of wrongs. That's for sure. All righty. Next up, we got Javon Baker. I know what you're all thinking. You're like, wait a minute. In the picture, he's going to UCF clearly. And in the videos I saw, he's going to Alabama. That's because no receiver apparently can stay still. Not on the football field or at the college campuses either. This guy's moving as well. So played the last 2 seasons over there at UCF after leaving Alabama after 2 seasons there that, let's be honest, weren't very productive, but he definitely showed some glimpses at times there. 6'1", 202 pounds, 22 years old. Last year, 13 games, 52 receptions, 1,139 yards, 7 touchdowns. Year prior, 14 games, 56 receptions, 796 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Pros on him, deep ball threat. This guy is a very good route runner as well. Knows how to get open deep in there as well, which is really a big key thing at that point there. If you can't get open later on when you are, 20 yards down the line, it's that much harder to throw at 20 yards with a half an inch of separation than it is at 5 yards. You have to be able to do that little twitch, that little move at that point to get yourself a little bit of separation. He's really good at that. Good size, obviously, like we said, 6'1", 202 pounds. That's a prototypical size there. Good at contested catches and tracks the ball well. If you're looking for a home run threat, this is the kind of guy that you can get later on in this draft at that point that fits that bill.
Hey, you're 100% right there because, one of the biggest things, especially in deep ball threats in the NFL, is separation.
Yep.
And that literally, like you just said, that little half inch makes all the difference.
Oh yeah.
And a completion or an incompletion. So like this guy here, like he has the ability to go there and get that 45-yard bomb and make a difference in your ball game.
Yeah, I mean, how many times do you see a deep throw and it's like it just goes over the hands of the defender? Like that's how close you're talking about. You're talking like a matter of 6 inches as far as the difference. That's, you got to keep in mind, it's not just the guy throwing the ball that's a pro. The guy who's trying to catch the ball, it's a pro. It's the guy that's also covering that's a pro as well. The amount of room, the wiggle room you get is so smaller at every single level. And that's the one concern I have with this guy is he's coming from UCF, and going UCF to the NFL is a pretty damn big jump there. So that's got to go in that con list, is the fact that all of his success was at a small school. Didn't really get any playing time at Alabama. And the other thing is he's not great at long speed. Like we talked about, he's good at getting open deep. It's because of the moves and the way he runs routes. It's not because of his athleticism. So if that changes when he goes from UCF, again, a small school, to the NFL, and all of a sudden those moves, like we've seen that before, like that doesn't have the same effect, he's going to be in trouble. And that's why he's down at, I think, about a third round rate at that point. Because if he had the speed to go with it, to be very frank, this would be one of those weird kind of scenarios where you got somebody at a really small school that's going to be a first, second round kind of guy at that point. But he goes back to that third round range because that speed isn't quite there that you want to see. But if that shiftiness, that twishiness he has in his route running is successful in the NFL, this is a guy that's going to have a lot of fun and a lot of offenses here potentially.
Especially if you get this guy late in the draft and he could become your wide 3.
Oh, yeah.
And everyone forgets that who is in front of him, the other 2 guys, where they're all spending the coverage, and he runs a little shifty little route. There's a little Jason jukes, and boom. Shimmy sham. It gets himself
right. Say ShamWow. You say ShamWow. We're going
to not say ShamWow.
That guy's going to come for your money, for the money.
Hi, it's Vince with Slap Chop. Slapping the choppers away. You ever see the remix? You ever see the remix of that? Oh my God, that thing is spectacular. Fantastic. Absolutely spectacular. Whoever thought of the idea of remixing the Slap Chop song, spectacular. I shouldn't say song, it's just a commercial, but they've turned it into a song. Spectacular, guys. Some people have way too much time in their hands, and sometimes it's a really good thing.
I was going to say as well with Baker, he screams perfect scenario to me being a Miami Dolphin. Because
yes.
Cool. If you look at, obviously their offense last year was like amazing, but when the 2 guys in Waddle and Tyreek were covered, even like just moderately respectively, Cedric Wilson couldn't do it, and he is overpaid way too much. And then they had that other guy, I can't remember his name. He had 1 or 2 games where he popped off, and then they got the tape on him, and it was done. And that's one of the reasons why Miami's offense couldn't necessarily get going later on, is because once you have only one of those guys, you're done. So getting this guy in the second or third just to be that actual third option for Tua and that offense, like you can get rid of more defensive players who cost you a lot of money if that be the case, because you're going to put up 65 points every game.
Oh, yeah. Not just against the Denver Broncos.
Yeah, exactly.
that was somebody.
That was crazy still. I think they're still scoring right now as we're talking.
But doing it wrong, that's a good move, especially because Waddle and Hill are just so fast.
Yep.
That you take into consideration when you cover those guys, that you, as a defensive quarterback or whatever position you're covering, you have to jump off the line that much faster to cover those guys. And if you get someone that runs a half a second less, you're jumping off the line too fast, and he's already open.
Yep. Here's a team we haven't discussed yet, really, as far as we're talking about third receiver. We mentioned the Dolphins now. I mentioned the Rams. I hate to say it on this podcast here, but the Cowboys. Keep in mind, the Cowboys released Michael Gallup. They got CeeDee Lamb, obviously. They need a third receiver though. Still, they don't have a third receiver. We all know that a certain receiver can get traded at any moment as well. On top of that, he's been traded like 17 times in his career. So I mean, this is I think you're going to see at one point in that like mid-range, like that second to fourth round, you're going to see Jerry Jones pick up the phone and call somebody to play receiver for him at that point. This could be the perfect kind of guy for him. He's a good compliment to what they got. So Jerry Jones, don't call him. Don't call him.
don't do that.
Don't
call more 5'6" running backs that work that their dads work for you. I think that's more. You need that kind of guy again. All righty. Now we get into the guy that I think has going to have potentially the coolest name in the entire NFL, Malachi Corle. And kudos to the very first guy on our list here that actually has stayed with one team the entire time of his college career here. Malachi is I have to call him by his first name. I love that name. I don't know why I do. It's a cool name. It sounds like something out of like a King Arthur book for some reason. I don't know why. It just does. I like it. It rings. Stayed at Western Kentucky. Western Kentucky the entire time. 5'11", 215 pounds, 21 years old. Last year, 12 games, 79 receptions, 984 yards, 11 TDs, 4 rushes for 11 yards there. 14 games, 101 receptions, 1,295 yards, 11 touchdowns again, 11 receptions for 11 rushes for 87 yards. Is a very raw talent. This guy was converted. He was actually originally a 2-star cornerback recruit coming out of high school there. And then once they saw what he can do as far as catching the ball, they're like, "Oh, hold on a second here. You're on the wrong side. You go over there. You're on offense from now on out there." I went a little more in depth with this guy because we talked about Javon Baker being from a small school at UCF. Let's be honest, UCF is still a legit college. It's just not SEC, Big Ten. There's still a difference of what they go against compared to some of the guys we're going to list here in this whole list here today. Western Kentucky, though, that's a little different here, okay? Like you expecting somebody's putting down some Hennessy and playing a little banjo music at that point. You're like, yeah, it's like Waterboy comes to mind at that point, So I looked up to see. I wanted to see what he did against some of the better schools he's faced, because keep in mind, these small schools, they get paid to get beat the crud out of by these bigger schools at that point. They get paid to do it. Sounds crazy. Like, could you imagine like the Chiefs like paying the Chicago Bears to go beat the crap out of the Raiders? It's just crazy. So 2 games I looked at specifically. This year he played against Ohio State. I think we can all agree Ohio State is one of the premier colleges in football there.
I guess
8 receptions, 88 yards, and a touchdown. That's a pretty damn good performance against them there. Against Auburn in 22, that was the best team he faced there. 12 receptions, 99 yards. So both times he's faced big schools, he has gone up to the task there at that point there. So I was kind of impressed by that. Like I said, usually I don't break it down to individual games like that. I wanted to simply because of the school he went to. As far as pros, he's actually called the Yak King because this guy, once he gets the ball in his hands, he'll take hits, he'll barrel around, he'll move around and shake a little. He does what he got to do, and he is known for getting a lot of yards after the catch there. Great at screens as well. Another guy that's good at blocking as well. This is a guy who, honestly, the biggest concern I almost get with this guy is the fact that like he takes hits like it doesn't matter. Like it almost makes me wonder, is he going to have injury issues eventually because he just takes hits he shouldn't take even?
Maybe because like one of my bigger concerns is possibly like you already alluded to is he's coming from a small school,
a little tiny school.
Little tiny school. Like maybe
if his school was any smaller, they would call it Malik Washington. Oh, I mean,
terrible.
I was watching actually while you guys are talking the highlights on this Ohio, because I actually did not realize that he played Ohio, and I'm watching him like. So he went up against Denzel Burke, who is one of my favorite corners in this draft, and Igbignosin, I believe is how you say his last name. and he's been he's doing really good.
Right.
Like they kept off of him. Like nobody was playing man on him. And it looks like towards the end of it, they were like, no. The 2 guys on him zone, or at least, we're playing a man. And then, so I'm watching him now. They got a man. He gets held and they got to go to the other side. He does a really good highlight package too.
And you know what's crazy about that too is like when you play Ohio State, for example, like obviously we're going to talk about one of their receivers later on. I don't think that's much of a spoiler alert, Marvin Harrison Jr. But they have a lot of good players on Ohio State. When you go against Western Kentucky, your job is stop Malachi Corle. That's it. That's your job. Stop him and you're good. That's their offense. I mean, so to me, it's fun to watch him against these bigger schools still have success when these bigger schools. That's what their job is at that point. Just stop this one guy. It's the only good guy they have, and they still can't do it. So, as far as his cons, the only cons I really saw when I watched a lot of the film of him, like you said, the Ohio State actually watched that film pretty closely, and that and the Auburn one specifically to see these bigger schools. And the only things I see is, again, small school. So you got to wonder if there's some issue with going from down here to up here in talent level you're facing against. That's different. But again, you also can sit there and say at the same point, he's also playing with less talent than most people are playing with as well. So there's that part of it as well, And the other part is, we mentioned already, the fact he's very raw. Like I said, this guy never played until college receiver. He wasn't a two-way star in high school. They literally had him as a shutdown corner, and he did it no problem. And that's probably why he's the guy that takes hits on offense, because he's used to taking hits. He was a defender. But, like I said, you watch him on screens, he'll barrel 2 guys over at that point and go right into the end zone. It's crazy to watch this guy. Like, he's fun to watch. You guys get some extra time and want to watch some things. I wanted to put up more film on this guy here, but to be honest, I'm always very cautious not to put too much up, because the last thing I want is to get sued by Fox Sports or anybody. So we try to keep it down, try to keep it down to a minimum. But like I said, guys, watch one of the guys who aren't as afraid of getting sued and see the highlight packages, because like I said, they're really impressive there. Yeah. All right, let's get into number 16. Number 16. Here. All roads lead to Rome in Wilson. Now I gotta ask the question here. You all just saw the video of what Roman Wilson looks like here with his helmet off and all. Is it just me, or he looks like the kid from Family Matters grown up?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
A little bit, right? Richie, is that his name? The little kid?
I was going to say, I can't remember most of the names now. That's slipping me.
I want to say it's Richie. I want to say it's Richie was the kid's name.
I think you're right.
Now, you're going to see a lot of theme with this, guys, with Michigan, where for some reason, people love these Michigan people. And they're going to talk to you about potential. And I'm one of those people. I don't give a damn about potential. You've had 4 years to show me what potential you have. And I said it when we talked about J.J. McCarthy on the QBs there. If he was that good, they wouldn't have held him back. And I still will say that forever. If J.J. McCarthy was that good, why would Harbaugh, a former quarterback himself? So you know what? You're pretty damn good, but let's save it for the NFL. Let's keep you on the down low, keep running the ball nonstop. So you're going to see Roman Wilson be a lot higher on boards than I have him here at 16. There's a lot of guys who are very big on him. No pun intended. We'll go over his size in a minute here. But again, I didn't see a ton from him. I like what I see, and I think he's a legitimate NFL receiver, and I think he's part of a good receiver group. He's one of the few guys on this list that if he became a star, I'd be shocked. Absolutely shocked. But he's also got one of the highest ceilings, I think, of any of these guys in this list. Like, he's the least likely to bust, in my opinion, as well at the same point. He's the safe bet. So, Roman Wilson out of Michigan here. Yeah. Second guy in a row here. Stayed at one school. Kudos to you, Roman. 5'11", 185 pounds, 22 years old. In 23, 15 games, 48 receptions, 789 yards, 12 touchdowns, 1 rush for 10 yards. In 22, 12 games, 25 receptions, 376 yards, 2 rushes, 39 yards, and 2 TDs. Again, this is not a lot, guys. You have to put both those years together to get what's actually considered to be an impressive year. So, again, I'm not going to sit there and say that he's not good. I'm not going to sit here and say he's not a legit NFL receiver. But I just can't see this guy having that possible star quality where if you're looking for a guy to possibly hit on in this mid rounds, listen, go with Corle, go with Baker. Those guys at that point, they're much likely to have the higher ceiling. They're gonna have the lower floor though to go with it. Keep that in mind as well. Pro wise, speedy, good route runner, good at 50-50 balls for a size, which is kind of funny because again he's so tiny. You don't expect him to do that.
He's a wee man.
He's a wee man. He's probably a good leprechaun. Con-wise, lack of strength.
This is season.
Trouble with press. Lacks any yak abilities whatsoever. Plus, he's had a couple injuries, so there is a little bit of durability concern with him as well. He's that first guy I got on that board where I'm saying second to third at that point. And I think the only reason I'm even saying second or third, to be very frank with you guys, is because I think somebody's going to fall in love with that potential that they see in all these Michigan guys. And someone's going to take him too early, to be very frank with you. But again, he's going to be that third, fourth receiver on a team at a ceiling, in my opinion.
The natty with him that comes with it is just that's what people are going to be enamored with. I mean, they're, Jim's going and telling everybody JJ's amazing, Roman Wilson's amazing, Blake Corum's not amazing. You don't like him at all. We don't touch him, kind of thing. We want him in the second.
The Chargers need a running back too, don't they?
You can't tell me that Jim isn't taking that second round pick and being like, Blake, you get here now, and that's it. Yeah. But yeah, I same thing with me too. Roman is one of those players where he's either going to be high bust or high ceiling. Like he's either going to go to a team and he's going to be really good in the system and he's going to be an NFL player and he's going to make some money, or he's going to go to the wrong place, which there's a few places he would not fit in my opinion, like Atlanta. He would not fit in Atlanta. He probably wouldn't fit in with the system that they got in Cleveland. They would not fit in with the system they got in Cincinnati, and he definitely wouldn't fit in the system they got in Pittsburgh. But there are places that probably could use him. Like that, there's a chance that if depending on who your guys' quarterback situation would be, and depending on how Dable and company run that, offense, he could be useful there.
We have enough tiny receivers with durability concerns. We have plenty of those. We're good.
I guess, yeah. Carolina probably would get a good look at him if they wanted a project with a high ceiling.
You're just trying to get a shorter receiver than their quarterback, aren't you? I'm on to
And NFC South bias.
Actually,
can't hate me.
I would see him going to the Raiders with that revamp they're got going on over there.
They did Hunter Renfrow, so there you go. He's a good potential replacement for him as a slot guy. Yeah.
The player before that we were just talking about, actually, the Malachi, I was like, man, Malachi would possibly be a really nice Raider. Like
if Al Davis was alive, he'd be a Raider right now. I'm telling you right now.
Yeah.
Al Davis.
Before the draft.
Look at that film. Look at that 40 time. Let's get him.
What pick do I have? 11? No, is he even close to 11? No. Lock it in.
First round, done.
Don't care. 3 rounds early, let's go.
It's 3 weeks before the draft. How's it feel to be 11th pick?
You know it's the case, man. That man was crazy. I think he was really good and really smart at some point in football too. That's the crazy part. And towards the end, I think that's the problem, is that we saw him towards the end. Towards the end, it's just like, I want the fastest guy.
Yeah.
Well, it's Sonic the Hedgehog coming out of college this year.
Well, now his son that he owns it, I think his son got a little scared in the offseason, and that's the reason it took a long time to get Pierce signed. Is I think there was a chance that Jim was going there and that they were going to go with that route and stuff. But also,
we talked about that.
Yeah, and
we said that we thought J.J. McCarthy and Harbaugh to the Raiders, and that'd be like the quintessential Raider move.
Yep, and then you would have had to trade Max. You probably would have had to trade Devonte. Like those things would have happened. The Jets would have eventually gotten Devonte. Now Like, because he's sitting there and he looked at Pierce, he looked at Crosby, he looked at some of these players in the draft, he looked at the opportunities around him, and he's like, shit, we could actually do this, and we can make the bad boy Raiders all over again.
Oh, yeah.
And then the second that they said, you know what, let's go with Pierce, and then a month later they signed Wilkins, I was like, oh, I cannot wait to watch some Raider football next year.
It's good.
It's been a while since we said that, right?
Right?
It's going to be a very, very, may I say, meaty defense. Meaty team.
It's only one pirate ship around here. Let's be fair.
On to number 15. And this is a guy that I don't think really gets any press whatsoever, but I kind of like him. Ricky Pearsall. Oh, yes. I can only find one video of him real quick, even, too, that I can legally use with thanks to the magic of GIFs, even. But, but this guy, like, what you saw in that video, that's his thing. Like, this man has like Velcro for hands. It's insanity. 6'1", 189 pounds, 23 years old, coming out of Florida. Last year, 23 there, 12 games, 65 receptions, 965 yards, 4 touchdowns, 3 rushes for 62 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's not a bad ratio. They're getting 2 touchdowns on 3 rushes. I'll take that. Right. In 22. 13 games, 33 receptions, 661 yards, 5 touchdowns, 8 rushes for 113 yards and a touchdown as well. This is a guy that I got to say, out of all the guys hype-wise in this draft, this is a name you don't hear very often, and I don't know why. I really don't know why at all. You're talking a guy who succeeded at Florida. You're talking one of the like quintessential football schools that plays a tough schedule every single year, and he found success. Great hands, good route runner. Also, geez, if you're playing a guy who loves to play zone defense, this guy just has that knack for finding that hole in the zone. He is that guy. Now, he does lack strength. He needs to work on man-to-man skills a little better there at that point. Does have some trouble with press as a result of that stuff there. But, yeah, Velcro for hands, guys. I mean, this guy just doesn't drop the ball point blank. I mean, this is probably one of the best set of hands you're going to find in this draft. And you're going to probably get him. I think I'll put in the same second to third round, I think. But I think third round is more where I'm going to see him at that point because of the fact that he just, for some reason, doesn't have that hype around him. You succeed at Florida, guys. You should be much more hyped out. Look at, I know it's kind of a curse word for us to say this. Kadarius Toney put together one decent season at Florida. That's it. One season.
Yeah.
And the guy becomes a first-round pick. This guy puts up a good season, and no one talks about him. Yeah. No one. Velcro for hands.
Probably because Toney.
Well, also, too, because when him and Richardson did get on the field a little bit there, it wasn't like he was utilizing Henderson, I think it was, a little bit more so. And Ricky was kind of just the meh. But he got thrown into it this year because Anthony's gone. Yeah. They had freaking everybody, Mertz or whatever, come in there for a little bit. He looked decent, but I mean, Ricky is going to look really, really good probably as a Chief. Like that, this is one of those guys that the Chiefs would probably take a second round fly on and be like, this is our guy. We don't need to go after Troy or any of those big guys and waste our first round pick. This is probably the guy they would go after.
And he'll line up on the right side of the ball. That's the key.
Yeah. And I don't think you're wrong, but I do think the Chiefs would probably get him in the third round.
I also
I think third round. I think if someone's smart,
if you're talking something
he's worthy of a late second.
Chiefs would get him in their third.
They would probably have to trade up at their third round pick to get up a little bit sooner in the third round. But yes, I do think so as well.
Oh yeah, no, it makes sense to do it because it's weird for a team with the greatest quarterback in the NFL to be the one that is so needy on receivers. It's not even funny, but that's where they're at. They need receivers. So here's a really good short-handed one they can get. What was that?
Yep. I was like, they thought Sky Moore was going to be their, burner route runner. Yeah,
I thought so too. I mean, I thought he'd be like the Wish version of Tyreek Hill at that point there. I didn't think he'd be Tyreek Hill is good, but I thought he'd be like that, like the poor man's version of him where, you can get him maybe 800 yards a season at that point there doing a similar role. But no, he's done nothing.
I just saw another Valdez Scantling. Like that's all I saw. Or another Equinus St. Brown, where it's just you get them open, like they can get open, but unless that ball is literally right in front of you, kind of thing, they're not good at the comeback. They're not good at the possession. They need to burn to get the touchdown in.
Oh yeah. All righty. Next up, we got number 14, Devonte Walker. Oh, yes. Here's a guy had a lot of hype coming into the Senior Bowl, and then all the hype kind of disappeared because of his performance at the Senior Bowl, guys. This is what I always say. In the end, when you're looking at a combine, a Senior Bowl, a Shrine Bowl, all these different things at that point, they should solidify what you think. You still have to go back to the tape itself. But then you get a guy like this who comes from a smaller school. We talked about it with Drake May and the fact that they played very small schools. They played one literally called the Camels. I'm sorry, I can't get past that still. We're going to bring it up every time I bring up North Carolina. The Tar Heels beat the Camels. I mean, that's just bad.
Talk about those camel toes.
The camel toes, what? So Devonte Walker played North Carolina last year, the prior 2 seasons there at Kent State. So never was really playing for one of the bigger schools that had a really tough schedule there. 6'2", 193 pounds, 22 years old. Last year, only played in 8 games, 41 receptions, 699 yards, 7 touchdowns, 3 rushes for 23 yards. Year prior, 12 games, 58 receptions, 921 yards, 11 touchdowns, 3 rushes, 29 yards, and a touchdown. Keep in mind, again, that was at Kent State, though. That wasn't in North Carolina. So there's a lot of this is like, and it's funny because it's almost crazy to see the fact that here's another guy from North Carolina, and it's like everything you could say about Drake May, I could say about this guy. Played at a small school, didn't really play real competition. He's got the prototype size. You see the potential there, but you don't see it on the field necessarily at times as well. All that stuff is there. Pro-wise, good body control, comes back to the ball well. High ceiling because, again, he's got the size. He's got the skills you see at that point there. Con-wise, though, again, didn't look good at the Senior Bowl, and low floor because this guy's just raw. And again, this guy didn't just look bad at the Senior Bowl. He looked bad. Like he went from an automatic 2nd round pick at worst, potentially sneaking into the end of the 1st even, to like this guy may drop down to the 3rd. That's how bad his Senior Bowl performance was there. So I think if you look at him and you go, okay, I like some of the stuff there. I like some of the skills. It's raw. I need some time to work with him. You got to understand, you're almost drafting him for 25. 24 is going to be basically a redshirt year for this guy to get this guy up to NFL skill level. And you better have one hell of a wide receiver coach to teach him at that point.
Yep.
If not an actual, a veteran guy at that point he can learn from as well would be great. That kind of situation. And he's got the tools. I can see this guy busting out in a year or 2 in the league at that point there. But I can also see him be out of the league in a year or 2. I can see either one of those scenarios.
It's funny you say that too, because this is the one wide receiver that everybody keeps talking about on the draft boards. Like, well, Drake made this, Drake made that. And I'm like, well, okay, if you're listening to the whispers that are coming out of the combine and out of the GM meetings and stuff, it's not as everybody is in love with Drake May as everybody thinks they are. And if not everybody is in love with Drake as much as they think they are, then Walker's not necessarily going to be on everybody's radar either. I personally think, and this could be a hot take, but I think he could go undrafted.
Wow.
Depending on the, not necessarily say the pro day, but, all it's going to take it for, 1, 2, 3 of these wide receivers behind him to start, being looked at by other teams towards the 4th, 5th, and 6th round. And he could fall that far. He could be like what the Bucs got last year with 2 of the guys. One was injury and one was just they didn't want to take the opportunity. And that was RJ Barrett, obviously. They didn't want to draft him because you can get him for the undrafted price. But he was a 4th rounder, respectively. And then JT Barrett is the same thing. There's a 3rd, 4th rounder, and it's just the injury plague and stuff like that. And I personally think he can go undrafted just because of how bad the pro day was and how good some of these other wide receivers did.
See, I feel like NFL GMs look at good talent like a horny dude looks at a hot girl with personality issues. Like they keep having the "I can fix her" mentality.
She's in love with me, bro.
Yeah,
I can fix this. I
don't care if she's a stripper. She loves
we'll work through this.
She loves.
And that's
me.
what I feel
Doesn't
like.
matter,
Devonte Walker. This is what he is. I feel like he's that guy that NFL GMs look at him, see the size, they see the
also true.
The occasional play that he does everything perfect, and they go, "I can fix this. I can make this guy a star." And that's the only reason why I still think second and third round for him. I think someone. I don't think. Don't get me wrong. There's some people that I think will. I think you're right. Some people are like, I don't want this guy. Like, I'm not taking this kind of risk unless he falls to the fourth or fifth. But I think someone's going to fall in love with that potential. And they're going to go.
I think so, and I think it's probably going to be the Commanders because I think this guy kind of plays into the scary Terry thing. Like he has a high ceiling, he has a low floor, but he has a ceiling. And if the Commanders take a shot on a gamble on something like this, and
another Tar Heel,
just blow up in the face,
awesome.
Which goes, yeah.
North Carolina players have such a very good reputation for panning out in the NFL.
Yep, especially on the Commanders.
But a long time, the rest of their laurels on LT still. We had the goat. Makes up for it all.
Everything.
All righty, guys. Next up, number 13, Xavier Worthy. He's the fastest thing alive. He's the fastest thing alive. That's the end of the Sonic the Hedgehog cartoon show when I was a kid. I remember that. The second Sonic the Hedgehog reference. I never thought I'd do 2 references in one day. But we did it. We did
impressive.
Xavier Worthy, 5'11", 165 pounds. So basically a Tank Dell clone there, size-wise. 20 years old. Back in last year, there in 23, 14 games, 75 receptions, 1,014 yards, 5 touchdowns, 4 rushes, 35 yards. Going to 22, 13 games, 60 yards, 760 yards, 9 touchdowns, 2 rushes, 14 yards out of that there. And this was the guy that everybody's talking about after the combine because he beat the record for best 40 time ever at the combine. And guys, guess whose record he beat? John Ross. I think Giant fans know a little bit about John Ross, the guy who could run down the field, and he was like Forrest Gump, didn't know when to stop running, didn't know when to turn a little bit, didn't know how to catch the ball once he got the ball near him. He was just fast. That's what he was. He was just really, really fast. It's like they put Usain Bolt in a football uniform and just went for it. He's never seen a game before, but he liked the uniform and tried it on. That's basically what happened there.
That's so pretty.
I'm from Jamaica. We got a bobsled team. So great acceleration, as you can imagine, the kind of speed he's got there. Not bad at contact for a size as well. Really good punt returner. That's one thing you don't hear a lot of people talk about there when it comes to these draft guys. Listen, 9 times out of 10, when you get drafted, you're not a starting receiver. You earned your way into that at that point. But when you can do things special on special teams, no pun intended, guess what happens? You go up a little bit more on the board because you're filling 2 needs now. You're a backup wide receiver. You're helping on special teams. You do all kinds of things to help out there. The big issue for me, and this is the big issue why I don't have him as high, is I'm a hands guy.
Yep.
I don't care how often you can get open. If you can't catch the ball once you're open, we got problems. And he definitely had drop issues there last year. I do think someone's going to fall in love with the speed there. Someone's going to pull an Al Davis. This is going to be a second-round pick kind of guy at that point there, purely because of that speed. So again, I can fix him. Listen, you got hands or you don't have hands. That's what it boils down to.
Someone in your comment section said, "Bet Jerry gets Worthy," and I'm like, it does seem like some type of player that Jerry would just be like, "Is he fast?
Yeah.
Fuck it, get him.
Let's get him."
Yeah.
Get her done.
Get her done.
Get her done.
He also, though, when you bring up the punt returning, they are talking about a different kickoff rule, which will allow more returns to happen.
Yeah.
So if that is going to be something that is being looked at, you may want to start being like, okay, so we're going to have to get returners now. Who are the best returners coming out? Xavier Worthy. So if you're a team, and the other thing is too, is his hands, yes, bit of an issue, but he can also catch it in motion. He can do that, that scat back weird, come behind and
you call him a scat man. I'm a scat man.
And obviously, when you put him in motion, like what they've done with Tyreek and stuff, like I've seen everyone talk about, yes, he would be amazing as a Dolphin. He would, but they already have the same player there, and he weighs a little bit more and he's a little bit faster, in my opinion. If you're trying to get the best out of Xavier Worthy for his speed and stuff like that, you would want him on somewhere where like Deshaun Jackson did flourish. You would want him somewhere where they have a big arm quarterback that likes to utilize the slot. So essentially Philadelphia obviously would be one of them.
Excuse me. Hold on a second. Do you say big arm quarterback in Philadelphia? Did you not see that Hail Mary at the end of the Super Bowl? I'm going to hold that over him till the day he dies. I'm sorry. Hail Mary, that total of 15 yards. I've never seen a more pathetic Hail Mary in my entire goddamn life.
Nick
Foles,
was
the most important Hail Mary he will ever throw in his entire career, potentially.
And he just didn't care.
Oh my God, I swear, like the referee almost caught it.
Yep. But the utilization through the slot, obviously, for Philadelphia would be great. If the Raiders needed just a home run style on their offense with Devonte Adams through the slot, that would be a great move. But the other one that I keep saying, besides obviously his teammate would also be a good fit here, and we'll talk about his teammate in a bit. But put Xavier Worthy on the effing Colts and just watch Anthony Richardson on, like a third down as his, oh crap, Pittman's covered here and the other guy's covered here. He'll just literally lob that thing and it will be Xavier Worthy doing 80-yard touchdowns for days.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, if he can catch it.
If he can catch it. And also he's good at taking the hits because I saw that highlight. He can lay the hit.
Yeah, no, he does. And that's where he's good as a returner because he can take those hits.
Yep.
He kind of reminds me of to a certain degree here. And this is, so that Giant fans obviously will understand very quickly. And he fixed his drop issues this year. But he reminds me of Darius Slayton to a certain degree like that. He got that speed, can get wide open, but every so often he's going to drop the ball and you're like, God damn it, that was a touchdown.
You're like, why?
Yeah.
It's going to be like that kind of player. Because like when you're a speedy guy and you're down the field like that and you drop the ball 30 yards down, like, God damn it, he was wide open. There's nobody in front of him. He would have been a touchdown. And that's the kind of player he's going to be. And you got to kind of accept that going into that because I'm sorry, hands are one of those things that I don't think you typically fix as a player. You either got good hands or you don't.
Yep.
The only time you could possibly fix it if it's a concentration issue. And it doesn't appear to be a concentration issue with him. Like, I don't see his head turning before the ball's in there. I just see it bounce off his chest, basically. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it's that kind of scenario. Again, Darius Slayton fixed it this year. So, could be wrong. Obviously, different scenarios happen and people learn things over the years. But it's just not something that typically you get fixed. Look at a guy like T.O. is a classic example. T.O. is one of the best receivers ever to play this game. Had drops issues. Never stopped that his entire career. People don't like to talk about that. That's why I don't put him in my top receivers all the time. Drop the ball too many times. Little butterfinger action there. So crispity crunchity. All right. Let's get into, you mentioned his teammate here. Let's get right into his teammate there. All right, Adon Mitchell played in Texas this past year, played in Georgia a couple of years prior to that. He's been kind of all over the SEC there. 6'2", 205 pounds, just 20 years old still. That's one thing I like. It's, listen, I don't ever take it away from a player when they're 23, 22, whatever. But if you're 20, I feel like there's more room for growth. And if there's a player that I look at and go, you know what? I like some natural abilities here. I think he needs some polishing here, and he's young. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to hold it against him as much. If he's 23 now, I'm like, hold on a second. I can't be reaping the benefits at 25. So here's a guy that fits into that category. Last year, 14 games, 55 receptions, 845 yards, 11 touchdowns, 2 rushes for 1 yard. Prior year in Georgia, 6 games, 9 receptions, 134 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So doesn't have a lot of experience because he didn't get a lot of playing time in Georgia there. Had just the 1 year there really in Texas. Tall with a great catch radius, good hand-eye coordination, good acceleration. The bad on him, bad going through contact and getting yak at that point, poor blocker, and needs help with the footwork in his routes at that point. Like he moves his body and shifts his hips and everything at the right spot. His feet, though, he just takes that 1 or 2 extra steps at that point that when you're in the NFL, that's the difference between giving away to the corner what you're about to do and being successful and doing a nice 12-yard hook route at that point there. So, and again, 20 years old, hasn't had a lot of starting experience in the college at that point there. I feel like this is the guy that you put a year or 2 in there as a 3rd, 4th receiver and then hope he blossoms into that starting guy at that point there. And he's probably going to be a 2nd or 3rd round pick at that point there. The big thing for me is, and this is where we get into the issue of we can't see what's going on. We can't know this part of it there. If I'm a GM, everything on what I think of him and where I'd want to pick him would rest on one thing, and that's the interview. I need to see what kind of kid this is. I need to see is he coachable? Is he going to change things up if we suggest things? Because if he's not, I'm wasting my time. But if he's going to go ahead and approve and he's well coached at that point there, then yeah, let's take a shot at this guy at that point there and see what he turns into, because he could very well be something special. He's got the prototype size. He's got the natural abilities. Just got to fine-tune his craft.
Yeah, 100%.
If he goes to somewhere like Buffalo, or if he were to go to somewhere like even the Saints, where they got Olave, and he can be utilized and developed properly in those systems, he's going to succeed in the NFL. But again, if he goes to somewhere like he goes to Cleveland right now, he ain't gonna do shit.
You just hate Cleveland. I noticed this. Like
Cleveland because
point to me on the doll where Cleveland touched you.
Well, it's more where they massaged me, but their fan base right now are so enamored. They're like, we're gonna have 4 wide receivers, and I'm like, okay, but no. Like you have Cooper, you have Moore. You just traded for who did they just traded for one there? Jerry Jeudy. And I'm like, and you think you're just gonna have another one. I was like, it's gonna be a crowded place, and even if Elijah Moore doesn't work out, and none of these guys are gonna come in and be a good slot receiver with Deshaun Watson as your quarterback. And I hate to be that guy.
Yeah, I actually see this guy going over to like the AFC West. I don't know where, but I want to see.
Are you like a Miss Cleo thing right now? I see him.
I see this. No, I want to say the Chargers, but
I see him.
At the same
I
time,
see mountain ranges,
and I wouldn't be surprised if the Raiders take him.
That's also a good one too. Chargers or Raiders would both be very
so
good.
like I'm sitting there like, and then you sit there and think about it as well. Like I mean, who else in the AFC West had issues with the receivers last year? I don't know. The Super Bowl. Yeah, Kansas City.
I mean, let's be honest too as well. People don't talk about enough, but the Chargers, they could be picking up a couple wide receivers this draft because listen, we talked about this, and again, this is another one I'm gonna put it on us at that point. Rob and I were 100% right in this guy so far. You don't draft receivers in the first round from TCU. God damn it! Learn your lessons. This is the 5th time it's happened, and it did not go well any of the times. So they got Quentin Johnson there, who's basically their top receiver right now, and he did not look good as a rookie. He did not look good at all, guys. So you have to imagine at pick 5, they're probably going to take a receiver. Where before they cut these 2 guys, I thought they were going to probably go ahead and take a tackle because they've definitely had issues with their offensive line. At this point, I don't see how you can't take a wide receiver if a guy like Nabers or Marvin Harrison Jr. is there at that point. You have to almost. And then now you go back maybe the 3rd, 4th round. You get a second guy at that point. You let him and Quentin Johnston fight it out for that second receiver spot. So that's another spot they could easily go to at that point there.
See, now you got me thinking that the Chargers are going to take either Rome or Malik at number 5 to be on the other side.
We're getting there.
I 100%. I've called it on the show a couple times already. Quarterback, wide receiver, barring any trades.
Okay.
That's what it's going to be. Barring any trades, because who knows what the Giants do, who knows what the Vikings do. There's a couple of teams up there that could easily try to move up.
I would possibly, that might just me obviously, but I would probably throw in that one left tackle out of Notre Dame, Joe Alt, before one of those wide receivers. But yeah, I do agree that it's probably
like I said, before they cut those guys, I would have said one cut, one trade. I would have said that easily the Chargers were to take Joe Alt. That's not a doubt in my mind that was going to be the pick. But now they got both of them gone. Like, you need someone to throw the ball to. And you have a chance to get generational talent. Well, again, we'll talk about those guys in a minute. We're getting sidetracked.
Yeah.
We're getting sidetracked. Let's pop down the riddle and let's get back in. All right. We got one more guy to go, and then we're halfway there. Whoa.
No! Living in Jersey.
Only one of us are in Jersey, too. We're basically as far apart from each other as possible, too. We got Canada, Florida, and Jersey. It's like, who would have thought you'd be the guy in the middle, Rob?
Well, I am the guy in the middle.
You are.
North.
Oh my God, you are up there. That's what I'm saying.
Middle, south.
Yeah.
There we go. All right, let's talk about number 11, Ladd McConkey. Laddie. Now, this is another interesting guy to look at. And here's part of the problem you're into when you start ranking these guys is, how do you look at players? Are you liking the guys that you think are, low floor or high floor, and low ceiling, or do you want to go for that home run pick at that point there? And that's part of where you go. We talked about Mitchell a minute ago, where he needs to polish up. He needs some work at that point. He's got that high ceiling. He's got that low floor because, again, you can't guarantee people are going to polish up. Ladd McConkey's the exact opposite. He's got that high floor, but he's also got that low ceiling. Kind of like we talked about Rome there before from Michigan there. 6 foot, 186, 22 years old. Last year, 23, had 9 games, 30 receptions, 478 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 rushes, 38 yards, and a TD. 22 had 15 games, 58 receptions, 762 yards, 7 touchdowns. And then 7 rushes for 134 yards and 2 touchdowns. This is this guy that, and part of the reason I got him up so high is because he's this guy that this new NFL loves. He's shifty. He moves around. You can put him in the backfield. You can put him in the slot. You can put him on the outside. But again, he's never going to be that, here's my top receiver. He's never going to be that, guys. I don't want to make it seem like I'm putting this guy too high. But I do think he's got that safe where he's going to be a legit NFL receiver. It's just a matter of how high up that board he goes at that point in your depth chart and all. Shifty, able to get open, good at yak. Also was a top flight punt returner. Again, we're talking about the kick returns before there, Andrew. This is a guy who, like, you put him on your special teams, he's going to be a stud at special teams. Cons-wise there, can't break through contact very well, which is weird that he's very good at returning and has trouble breaking through contact as a receiver. Those two things don't seem to go hand in hand. He does it on special teams. He can't do it on offense. I'm not quite sure why.
It's also a little different.
Lacks top speed, and here's the big one. And this is what really stops him from, I think he would have been a top flight receiver this year at Georgia. He's had some knee issues.
Yeah.
So you got to look at the medical. This is one of the first guys we're talking about the medical stuff. Like, you really have to look at the medical and go, okay, I'm confident in these knees. Okay, these are the bee's knees. They're going to last a while, and he's going to have no problem. Because if you're not, you have plenty of option guys. You don't need to go with this. So I'm going to run to the assumption that everything's okay medically, but we don't know that. So assuming it is, that's where we're at. Oh, we lost Rob. He's got a cartoon to me. And they're about to lose Andrew as well. I'm all alone.
I was just literally replying to the fiance here. The one thing I was going to say about Ladd, though, we need him and we need his high side to go up. for the white team, inevitably, that keeps being talked about on all these podcasts by all these NFL players and stuff. Like, can we just listen? This draft, we got a white running back coming up, we got a white cornerback coming up, and now we got another white. What's that?
Is it JCC Horn Jr.?
No, we got Cooper DeJean, man. He comes in. We got so many players for the white team now. Like, he needs to be good. No, I do think Ladd. Again, we were talking about certain locations. As long as he doesn't again go to certain places, I'm not going to say Cleveland, but
just say Cleveland.
I actually
get mugged there once as a child or something. Like,
I'd never go into Cleveland. That's for sure.
I wouldn't have all the trash talk you've been doing.
Right. Yeah. Any Cleveland fan in here is going to be like, nah, dude, that NSD, that guy from up north, not screw him.
Can't do it.
Yeah. I think he would be a great fit in Atlanta. So he doesn't have to leave too far from Georgia. He can be that slot guy that more than likely Kirk Cousins will utilize on a daily. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Plus, he can take him out to varsity.
Yeah, no, he'd be like, no, I can show you Atlantic City, Kurt. Follow me.
There's not much left to Atlantic City, trust me. It's really not much. Every time I go there, it's like, this casino's closed, that casino's closed.
It's funny because I heard of Atlantic City when I was younger, probably around the same time I heard about like Las Vegas. And then all of a sudden I never heard of Atlantic City until Kirk Cousins was going to sign with Atlanta. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. They do have that knockoff like Vegas thing going on there, right?
No, that's Jersey.
Oh, that's Jersey. Hey,
Jersey. Well, where is he? He's all fuzzy. Fuzzy was the bear. That's Jersey where we have Atlantic City.
Goes to Atlantic City.
Yeah. So you missed all the Atlantic City talk. So I don't know. There's no casinos in Atlanta.
I thought there was an Atlantic City. They called it Atlantic
City. I'm pretty sure they have Native American.
Do they? Okay. Now, you may have been thinking of the Futurama episode where it was the lost city of Atlanta.
Could be.
That was a spectacular episode of Futurama. We're more than a great airport.
Oh yeah, like the Denver airport you guys got, right? Like everything, like there's nothing.
No, Atlanta is the biggest airport in the entire world. Like literally the entire world. Atlanta.
Really?
Yes, look it up. It's the most.
I would have to go shenanigans in that. I've been to Atlanta Airport. I've been to JFK. I've been to Newark. I've been to Houston. A lot of international airports.
I actually would have guessed either LA or Houston personally.
Yeah, here we go. This is according to Wikipedia.
Okay.
I can't believe this is the topic we're going on to here, but we're going for it. Busiest airports in 2023 based on current stats. Number 1, Atlanta. 104,653,451 passengers so far. Number 2, Dubai International, 86 million.
Yep.
Dallas number 3, 81. And then
I guess with FedEx and stuff like that.
79. So keep in mind, you're going 86 to 104. That's the difference. That's how big that freaking airport is, dude. It's insanity. It's just very big and very spread out, so you don't realize when you're there how big it is.
I hate flying.
I love flying only because it means I'm going somewhere with a coconut and an alcoholic drink and a straw.
I can do that.
I'm also cheap, so
you can't do that. I've been to Canada. I know better.
Yeah, but you have to wear flannel when you put the coconut and the straw in
there. What's wrong with that? At least you're still wearing shorts.
looking like an extra for the Red Green show.
Yeah, I look like I belong in Leonard Kinney.
Yeah.
I think we're almost out of Canadian TV references. Like
Red Green, Leonard Kinney.
We're like up Schitt's Creek now.
No.
I think that's the extent of all the Canadian TV I know at that point there. All right. So real quick here, let's go ahead and we're going to pay the bills real quick, and we're going to go ahead and go through some of the comments here. And then, guys, we got 10 more to go. We're an hour and 15 minutes in, guys. Hope you guys are in for the long haul here. We have to stop having beverages here. We're going to have to start doing bad.
We have to talk about Connor's comments as well.
What was that?
We got to talk about the comments.
Connor's comments. That's what I'm saying. We got pay the bills, go to the comments, then we got 10 more to go.
Enjoying the show. Looking for more goofball action? Consider a membership at buymeacoffee.com/2giantgoofballs. Memberships start at just $5 and give you additional goofball access. One-time support payments also available starting at just $3. buymeacoffee.com/2giantgoofballs.
All right. Connor's pretty much been the guy spamming us nonstop. He's the mad spammer who spams in the night here. Because foobs, I prefer boobs. It's not the rumor I heard, Connor. He says, I am 5'9". For all I know, I've shrunk since I'm in my 50s. My life sucks. LOL. He's just the bowl of sunshine there, isn't he? He said, hey, does Foobs play the Scottish hammer and his off time at parties? You know, I can kind of see that just a little bit because of the beard. I can see it a little bit. The Jamie Gillan lookalike there, just a little bit. We should have said it was Jamie Gillan. We should.
You're right.
Hey guys, we got Giants punter Jamie Gillan here on the show.
Yeah, I got some beard oil if you want.
Connor says Jerry Jr. didn't do good in the NFL. Let's see if Brendan can. You know, Edelman took Jerry Reese's daughter to the prom. I forgot about that. I wonder if he picked up wide receiver moves from Jerry. Listen, I think he's probably more scared because, listen, he may have played wide receiver. People don't realize. Look at the sizes we're talking about, unless we've compared them to Tank Dell in this episode. You're still talking about guys that are over 6 foot, over 200 pounds. The average person is not that size still. Jerry Rice was definitely probably an imposing figure when you're in high school. And you got this guy who's like 6'2", 220 pounds staring at you at that point there.
All right. Well, I mean, you got Edelman, who was also going to.
But he was like 5'8". I mean, no, he wasn't quite. I think he was like 5'10", 190. Like, he wasn't big. Jerry Rice was retired.
Jerry Rice also retired for a while. He lost.
Dude, Jerry Rice is still big in he's like 60s now. He's still a big guy for his.
He
size.
He is.
He keeps in good shape.
Tall.
He does. He makes me feel embarrassed about how bad a shape I'm in.
Well, stop being a fatty. I don't know.
I'm not a fatty. I have a dad bod. There's a difference. I just don't have any kids.
New in thing right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I'm just saying, Jerry Rice. He's not as
wife
big
feels
as he
secure.
was.
My tummy.
And you got
maybe sounding like a cannibal there. Let's see.
Got some weight on him.
Connor says, does Foobs realize it's 2024 and to see his chart behind him is 2018? He's got 19 in there as well.
Yeah, 2016 through 2019 here. 2020 was a segment I did on my Friday show. So
yeah. Connor says she's a lawyer, stripper, and entrepreneur. Total marriage material, bro. This is what we're talking about. Who are the GMs were saying they can fix anybody? He says, bet Jerry gets worthy. Yeah, it's not the worst call in the world. Connor says, my stripper, lawyer, entrepreneur girlfriend could throw a football farther than Hurts did in the Super Bowl. LOL. Yeah. All right. Miz says, sup? What's good, guys? Miz here. What's up, Miz? Good to see you, man. All righty. Now, also, guys, we're going to do a little second comment section. We're done with that. Listen, I see a lot of people watching here that are not commenting. I'm just saying. Join the show. Tell us your thoughts.
Jerks.
Give your opinions. Oh, did I say jerks? That's they're shy. I don't call them a jerk.
You make Canadians feel so wanted there in the chat, guys. Come on.
Yeah, like seriously. Listen, the war in 1812 is over. Okay, we're not fighting them anymore.
We'll start curling.
Curling. Do you guys really curl in Canada? Is that a thing? Like, or is that like?
The town that I'm in right now has a way nicer curling rink than they do like a actual rink for their hockey team. So,
is it like it's a particular broom you're supposed to use, like a Lipman broom, or like you just get a random like Rubbermaid one from Home Depot? Like...
I stopped picking up chicks from that type of group when I was in like grade 7 because like their eyes started getting lazy and stuff, and I was like, I'm not.
I'm just saying, like, when you're curling, is it cheating if you bring a Roomba?
I mean, they might have a time limit, but man, can you imagine just a Roomba right there at the end, just missing all the other opponents?
AI is taking over. Oh, here we go. All righty, guys. Let's get into number 10 here. We're about to hit a whole stretch here of Washington receivers. Fair warning here, guys. So when you hear Washington, don't be surprised, because I'll give you the spoiler alert. 3 out of the next 10, Washington.
What?
Pretty impressive there.
Say what?
All righty, Jalen Polk here. Let me get back to my notes here. We're talking about the Atlanta airport. I still have that on my screen here. 6'1", 203 pounds, 21 years old. Last year, kind of got thrust into the position that people didn't expect him to be, or all of a sudden he had to be the second receiver in Washington there because of injuries to Jalen McMillan, which we'll talk about him in a little bit here. A lot of people have Polk actually as still the second best receiver in Washington. I'm putting him at number 3, and the main reason why I think that is because if you look at the game tape there, once McMillan came back, Polk kind of took that third role again. He didn't assert himself as that number 2. And if you can't assert yourself as number 2 on your own team, I can't put you number 2 on my list at that point from your team. So last year, 15 games, 69 receptions, 1,159 yards, 9 touchdowns, 4 rushes, 32 yards, and a touchdown. Back in 22, when he was full-time third receiver, 13 games, 41 receptions, 694 yards, 6 touchdowns, and 1 rush for 15 yards. Pro-wise, good size, good speed, good at motions and screen the air, good hands. Cons with him, lacks explosiveness, slow off the line, needs to break out of routes better, and trouble with press. Now, again, you have to look at it and go, are these traits I can fix? Explosiveness, can't necessarily fix that. Slow off the line, can't necessarily fix that. Needs to break out of the routes better. That you can probably fix with some coaching. Trouble with press, it depends. Is this a strength issue, or is this an issue with him as far as, where he's trying to pop back to break free at that point? That's a 50-50 there. So this is a guy that he has a lot of good to him, but there's some cons that you're probably not going to fix. And you have to know that going into it there. Again, he played the third receiver role very well in Washington. I think he actually will play that third receiver role very well also in the NFL as well. I think that's where he's going to end up being. I do think someone will take him in the second round, and I think he's going to be a decent player. I don't think he's going to be a star, but he'll be a decent player.
Yeah, like you said, if you get yourself the third star to your team at a rookie deal in the third round, you're looking at that cap value for your future potential overall of a better setup. Like, if you have to overpay for your wide 4s and wide 5s, like it's a terrible scenario. But like, if you could draft,
who would overpay for a wide receiver 5?
I'm just saying, if the veteran minimum is overpaying.
Yeah, like don't do it. Don't pull a Kenny Galladay. Just saying.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like. You want, like, we talked about Crowler being on his team last year. You signed him to a veteran minimum. Well, guess what? You just got Polk for cheaper.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, you get a positional player that possibly could be Crowler. You take it, especially in the third round.
Yeah, like I said, I like him. I just. While I like what I see on him, I like to try to be a little realistic in what I think his ceiling is as well. Like I said, I think he's going to max out like a third receiver on a team, which is not. Listen, there's plenty of guys who don't even get close to that kind of abilities. So if you can get 600-700 yards a season at that point as a third receiver for a good quality offense, that's a nice role. That's a legit receiver in this league. You have a good career.
He screams a saint. Even if Marvin Harrison Jr. went to the Cardinals, I could see him being slotted in as like a third option to just give Kyler like everything. Like, here you go.
Traded away all their receivers. They kind of need someone.
I think they have one other one still there. With,
one. They have a tight end.
Marco, I want to say.
Hello.
You're right.
Yeah, damn it. There is someone else there, or the Raiders, the Saints, the Cardinals, and the Raiders. I think he would do really.
The Raiders
well
just drafting all the receivers. We got them drafting everybody. They have a whole team of wide receivers. You're going to play linebacker now. You're going to play corner.
They got a lot of. I mean, they're probably going to go after corners more so. Like they're probably going to grab as many second and third round pick corners as they possibly can and be like, get in here and do your job. So. But yeah, Polk, like even on the Saints, Polk being there while Olave kind of sees most of the looks, and then he's kind of like I need you to get to the chains here real quick and make this catch here, and then 2 years down the road, you could probably be in rotation on an everyday basis. If Derek Carr, blanket.
I can see his Saints, but yeah.
He's a nice mix actually, New Orleans as well, because keep in mind they got, along with Olave there, they also got Rashid Shaheed as well, who's a good deep threat. So now you got a third guy who's again more of a screens and that kind of stuff kind of player at that point, to the short stuff like a slot position kind of stuff. It works out pretty well. That would be a good fit, I think. Yeah. We'll see what they think, obviously. All righty, on to number 9. Alabama, roll tide. Here is a guy who I think is quite possibly one of the most underrated players in this draft. I'm calling it right now. If you watched Alabama's offense, it was not as smooth. It was not as good as the typical Alabama offenses are. Their quarterback play was horrible. I'm calling it right now. Horrible. Okay. Jermaine Burton played in Alabama the last 2 years, started off the first 2 years in Georgia. So, I mean, you're talking about he went to the two basically top football schools as a kid. It's like going to Harvard and then getting your master's at Oxford at that point. 6 foot even, 196 pounds, 22 years old. Last year, 13 games, 39 receptions, 798 yards, 8 touchdowns. 22, he has 13 games, 40 receptions, 677 yards, and 7 TDs. This is a guy that you have to watch the tape to understand what kind of player he is. I cannot tell you how many times I'd watched games with Alabama, and he's wide open all the time. They just can't get him the ball. This is a guy that I'm telling you right now, the stats do not tell you how often he was open, do not tell you how good of a player he is. And keep in mind, again, it's Alabama. Alabama's got a pretty decent record of wide receivers. Now, were they all studs? Were they all able to stay sober and not kill people in the streets? No.
Oh, jeez.
But Alabama's had some pretty good receivers come out of there in the last 10 years or so. I like to look at a school that tends to breed these kind of guys at that point. You know what I mean? Like, you're good at making wide receivers. Okay, I have a wide receiver from this school. That's a pretty good risk to take. And that's what I look at in this kind of scenario, Pro-wise, good route running, able to get separation. Cons, the big thing is the offense didn't give him a chance to shine. I don't know what his ceiling is because we never really got the chance to see it at Alabama, which is crazy. It's Alabama. The other thing is not a good blocker. And you guys know, again, I talked about this earlier. I love a good blocker. That's the one knock I have on him. It's not that he didn't want to do it. He just didn't seem to do it well. So hopefully that's something that can be coached out and changed out there. I think he's going to be a third-round pick. I think some people are going to look over him because they're going to look at the stats and they're going to look at the line and go, hold on. This isn't like some of the other guys who've gotten from Alabama. But I'm telling you, he's a lot closer than people think he is. I don't think he's quite as good as those guys, but he's a lot closer than people think he is. This is a guy that I think all day long will be a number 2 receiver in this league.
Yes, he's going to be one of the steals of the league, and he's going to go to a team that already has a Batman out there. You pick him up, he's an instant Robin.
Yep.
He might be your Nightwing, if you will.
Nightwing, ooh.
It's funny.
Here.
It's funny you say it like that too, because if there's one person that kind of needs a little bit of help, and I guess they're Robin in a way, and he wasn't, the number 1 target for him when he was in college, but I can see him going to Carolina and being back with Bryce.
Yeah.
And it's just that comfortability that we talked about there, like with the whole Caleb and Rice situation. This is the one that seems more so like it probably will happen. Like Carolina's got the 33rd overall pick. They've got another second that they got from you guys, I do believe, is it not?
They did.
For the Burns trade, right?
Yeah.
So that was
54.
Oh, it was that second round pick. It wasn't the 30.
No, this was a 30 something if they got from.
Oh, was it?
This was not the one we got from Seattle. We gave them our original one.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
You're talking it's what, like pick 30, like 8, 39 around there,
or 38 or something like that. Yeah,
it's the high 30s.
Yeah.
So they got a couple of picks there in that range.
So I don't see them necessarily going there. I think those picks they'll obviously use for, the help that they actually need, like probably grabbing a tackle. They'll probably grab another defensive, if Chop's around there or something like that. But, they can utilize that very, very early third round pick and either trade into the second if they want to get them or grab them with that third round pick. And I do think him and Bryce together would probably be very beneficial for not only the Panthers, but his career as well.
Yeah, like I said, I do think third round is where I think he's going to go. And like I said, it's a shame because I think he's got the talent to go in the second round all day long. Mm-hmm. He really does. And again, I challenge somebody to look at the film and watch to see how often he's open and not go, oh my God, what the hell is wrong with Alabama? This guy was wide open half the damn time. Because I'm telling you, he was. Either the quarterback couldn't get the time or just flat out didn't see him. Wide open. So... like I said, I think he's a guy that might shock some people because you don't hear, again, it's another guy you don't hear much about, but I think I probably have him a little higher on the board than a lot of people do have him at there. But I think he's going to do a lot better than a lot of people think. I really do.
This is going to be one of those sneaky good picks that you get out.
Yep. This will be one of those ones where next year we do talk about receivers. Like, remember what I said, Jermaine Burton?
Yeah. Really, Bird, we picked him 9th in the draft. And
because you know what it is? There's guys I talk about that are
5th best rookie in the wide receiver market.
When I talk about guys like Malachi Corle, and I say, okay, this is a guy who's going to be a boom or bust kind of thing. He could really make a shot at the NFL, or he could be a guy's out of the league. And I'm honest about those guys, and I have no problem putting them towards the bottom of my list at that point there. When I put you at number 9, I'm saying you're going to be solid. This is not a ceiling floor situation. This guy's going to be good. And I really think that's where he's at there. So remember that name, because like I said, someone's going to get him, and someone's going to get him probably in the third round. And I think it's going to be a steal for them. I really do. So unless somebody else agrees with me, it's in a GM position. You know what I'm saying? You never know.
We're for hire.
We are for hire. Yes. Joe Shane, call us up. We're available. All right. Next up, number 8, Jalen McMillan. Oh, yes. He's not just a good dancer. He's also a good receiver as well. 6'1", 197 pounds. He's definitely the small of the players there from Washington there. 22 years old. Runs a 4.47 40, by the way, guys. So not a bad speed there. Last year, 11 games, 45 yards, 559 yards, 5 touchdowns, 3 rushes for 30 yards and a touchdown. Now, you might look at that stat and go, that's a bad year. Goddamn. He really didn't play a lot of the weeks, even though he dressed and he'd just be kind of going out there as a decoy. He had 0 catches from week 4 to week 7. He had just 5 receptions for 26 yards in week 8. So you can do the math, and Rob knows I love doing the math. I do love doing the math.
He's not good at it, but he loves it.
In the other 6 games, that means he had 533 yards. Times that by 2. The math is not difficult. That's 1,066 in 12 games, which would be a typical season at that point there. So his year is not as bad as the numbers look when you actually look at what he did overall. And again, once he got healthy, he went right back into that number 2 role. He took that right back from Polk. He just spot out took that. So, again, had a knee issue there. Wore a pretty thick brace for part of the season as well there. So, again, this is another guy that we talked about medical stuff. I'm assuming we talk about these guys, everything medically clears. We don't know that. Only guys that do are them and the NFL teams out there. We don't get that kind of information there. Last year, 22 there, 79 receptions, 1,098 yards, 9 touchdowns, 1 rush for 2 yards. So back-to-back 2 solid seasons to that point when you look at the per game as opposed to what he did for the year there this past year. Pro-wise, speedy, good body control, great route runner, and also great at tracking the ball at that point. His hands just seem to be out ready to go when that ball is coming out there. Bad-wise, though, lacks yak, lacks some strength, and again, obviously a lot of that comes with the size. This is another guy that I think is going to end up probably around that 3rd round range there. But if you're looking for a small, shifty receiver, you could do a whole lot worse than Jalen McMillan, that's for sure.
I mean, he's also got the frame where he has the potential to put that weight on.
Yeah.
To be a little bit more solid. So, yeah.
Yeah, but you don't want to do that where it takes with his speed, and that's part of that fine line there.
No, I got you. Like, you go to the NFL, like, he's going to put on 10 pounds.
Like, don't have him hanging out with Kelvin Benjamin, that's for sure.
Yeah, be it with Lacey with Green Bay.
Be a tight end in no time.
Hanging out at the Golden Corral.
Oh my God! I still can't believe how far down that guy went and how quick he went. But yeah, I mean, again, Washington here, and part of the thing again we have to look at when you look at these guys is you have good quarterbacks in some of these schools as well. Obviously, we'll talk about some LSU guys a little later. We talked about some Texas players at that point. Part of it you have to go okay. Does the wide receiver make the QB? Does the QB make the wide receivers? And that's part of what you have to look at as well in this whole thing there. But to me, when you have 3 guys all excelling, that's pretty impressive. And that tells me that they're good receivers and a good quarterback. And that's why I've been so high on the Washington guys.
This is probably one of the highest wide receivers I have ranked in this draft that a lot of people are still, meh on. And the reason is when you look at the tape, when you look at some of the games in the playoffs, when they needed a catch, when you needed the first down, they went to him. When you needed the possession, they throw it to Rome in the playoffs. But when you needed someone to grab that ball 3 yards before the chains and literally pull 2 wide receiver, 2 corners, and a little bit of a linebacker with you for 5, that right there tells me everything that I need to know. And the other side of it, he, just like Rob was saying, his body frame, he can put a little bit more weight on, and he'll still be like the Jackson Smith and Jigba of this draft.
Mm-hmm.
He will have the type of speed. In my opinion, his high side is Jackson Smith and Jigba right now, and his low side at the bare minimum, and this is a name nobody has heard of for a little bit, Will Fuller from the Houston Texans. When those guys were going at it, like everyone was all D-hop. And then all of a sudden, when Watson needed that extra little bit of burst, it would just be out of nowhere. Those
Randy Watson.
Yeah. And those
Randy Watson
just flying down the field for these random catches. Like he got hit by 3 dudes in the air, came down on his shoulder, got up, threw the ball down for a first down. And we never saw Will Fuller after that again. Yeah. But that is what I see with Jalen McMillan. He is my favorite wide receiver in this draft.
Yeah, like I said, I think that people overlooking, as I said, I think a lot of people look at the numbers. Okay, well, Polk was the number 2 receiver, but I think that Polk is the number 3. And again, if you look at the game-by-game tape at that point, once McMillan got healthy, it's pretty obvious who Washington thought was their second best receiver as well. So you can't just look at the year stats. I love people to, this is the year stats. This is clearly what's going on here. Like, there's a lot more to the tape. That's when you miss guys like McMillan and Burton, the last 2 guys we talked about, and don't realize how good they are. So, like I said, that's part of it. And again, the medical has to clear out for this guy. You have to look at those knees and be confident that it's not going to be a long-term problem. Again, when I'm doing this, where we're all assuming that that's going to be no problem. We don't know. We don't have access to that stuff, so we're going to be optimistic.
The best place for him, in my honest opinion, would be on the other side of Amon-Ra St. Brown on the Lions.
That's a good spot.
Interesting. You also wouldn't gamble like the rest of their team, probably.
No.
That's very cool. Womp. Oh, I said it. It's okay. Next up, we got another guy who's kind of those low floor, high ceiling kind of guys here. Keon Coleman. Oh, yes. Keon. Another guy who split some time there. Played last year over at Florida State. Prior to 2 years to that over at Michigan State. He just loves states. He just wanted to visit all the states at that point. 6'3", 213 pounds. Again, just 20 years old. So remember we talked about before with raw players. You don't mind raw players when they're very young, as long as they're coachable. And this guy definitely falls into that category. Plus that size, 6'3", 213 pounds. If that's not prototypical, I don't know what is. Last year at Florida State, 12 games, 50 receptions, 658 yards, 11 touchdowns. TD machine there. 1 rush for 2 yards. Back in 22 over Michigan State, 12 games, 58 receptions, 798 yards, and 7 touchdowns. Pros on him. Athletic, boxes out. He's actually got a basketball background. You can kind of see it when he goes for that jump ball. It's almost like he's like going to get the ball as it comes out the hoop there at that point there. He's got that kind of look there when he does that. Really good body control, great catch radius, and speedy with good acceleration. These are all great things, and a lot of these things are things you cannot teach, which is, again, why I'm saying he's up there very high, but he's up there with that, got a high ceiling, and you got a low floor. This is that kind of guy there. He could be a number 1 receiver in this league potentially. That's his ceiling. Like, this is a guy that could be a 1,000-yard receiver year in, year out at the NFL. He's got that potential. But he's also a guy that could be a 300-400-yard receiver, guy that goes down as your 4th and 5th receiver at that point. He's got that as well, because the cons in there, you got to look at the fact that he has some separation concerns. You look at him there, as much as he's good at boxing out, it's a damn good thing he's good at boxing out because he had to do it a lot, and a lot more than he should have had to do.
I was going to say.
Yeah.
His biggest thing is, like, you saw that basketball, like, movement from being in close quarters because he had to be able to go in the movement to make the catches. But, like, at the end of the day, you could do that in college to get away with it. Can you do that in the NFL?
And I think a lot of that really is the fact that he's a very raw route runner. He kind of just runs and does his thing. He doesn't have some of the nuances in route running that you need at that point there. So, again, if he's coachable and you have the right guy to teach him, and you can get around that, this is a guy that, I guess, then sky's the limit for what he can do there. But again, you have to look at that floor and that ceiling. You can't just look at this. I love when guys do that. Oh, this guy's got a 1,000-yard receiver written all over him. Why did he do it in college then?
Yep.
If he's got it,
this
why
man
did he
could
do
be
it in
a
college?
Greek god
or
a leprechaun.
You have to be realistic in what you're saying at that point. This guy could be. Why do you say no offense as if he's a leprechaun? He's called him a leprechaun. No offense, leprechaun. Like, wow. This guy's never coming on the show.
I didn't want to interrupt because you were making a good point, and I didn't want to like just start bursting out laughing. I was like, that was fucking funny.
Listen,
my last name asking me Lucky Charms.
I get the most Irish last name here, so
it's okay.
That's fair.
It's all right. I married into the family, so it's okay. But yeah, I mean, again, you got it. I love people say that, like, oh, he's got a 1,000-yard receiver written all over him, but they don't acknowledge that floor. You have to acknowledge the floor with a guy like Keon Coleman because it's there, it's legit, and if you ignore it, you're setting yourself up for failure. Because to depend on this guy to be a number 1 right off the bat when he has these issues and he has that rawness is setting him up for failure. You need to set him up as a number 2, number 3 at that point. Almost like, let's say you had a guy that's going to be coming up for a big contract soon. You go, I got 1 or 2 more years, and you do that kind of forward-thinking thought process. That's a team that should draft a guy like Keon Coleman and go, you know what? Maybe he can take over for him in a couple of years, and I can avoid paying him $25 million a year. That's the kind of forward-thinking team needs to go ahead for a guy like that. So I can't think of one off the top of my head.
So you're saying he's a cowboy?
Why? They're going to pay CeeDee Lamb.
I don't think the Cowboys have made it a secret that they like him a lot too. So
yeah. Again, he's got that kind of cowboy glow to him at that point. There, they love guys that have high potential and they don't care about the floor. They figure they take enough guys with high potential, enough of them are going to pan out. And let's be very frank, though, as much as we hate the Cowboys here in the show, they've been done very well in the regular season. The postseason is a whole other thing. But the regular season-wise, most teams would take their regular 12 and 5 kind of record at that point there. I mean, so you can't 100% say they're wrong in what they're doing. And they do that at key positions, wide receiver, offensive line, defensive line. They keep taking the shots corner. They take the shots at the important positions like that.
Running backs.
Which, if you notice, it's what the Giants finally did this year. Said, we'll let our safety and our running back walk. What's going to build up the offensive line and the defensive line? Because if you can't win the trenches, you can't win point blank in general.
I just remembered you got Thibodeau and Burns now on your line. Like,
that's what I'm saying. With Dexter Lawrence in the middle.
And then the possibility of adding like Mason Taylor in the second round from LSU.
This is going to be, if they can all stay healthy and work well together, it's going to be a fun line at that point. Though I do still say we overpaid for Brian Burns, and I don't mean draft capital. I mean money wise. We paid on potential. We definitely paid on potential, and I hate that.
We did, but if it pans out, it was a great deal.
Yeah. So. All right, we are on to number 6, which is a guy that I got to say first off, before I start this.
Give to you.
South Carolina, get on the goddamn ball, because this is, besides number 20 here, Malik Washington, this is the only guy that I didn't find a single GIF video for to add on there. Because, again, that's all I like using is the short stuff. You can't get in trouble. It's too short for YouTube to care and stuff like that. Come on, get with it. I found one cartoon, and that was it. So he's got a cartoon one. There he is, the cartoon Xavier Legette there at that point from South Carolina. Which, listen, if you had told me at the beginning of this year that Xavier Legette would be in the top 10 of wide receivers in this draft, I would have laughed in your face. This guy spent 4 years doing absolutely nothing at South Carolina. And then, let me be very clear in how I word this. They schemed him into fruition this year. And they realized how to use him correctly and make him good. So this is why even though he had a great year at South Carolina, why he's number 6 and not in that top tier at that point there. 6'1", 221 pounds, 23 years old. This year, 12 games, 71 receptions, 1,255 yards. That's pretty damn impressive. 7 touchdowns. What's not impressing is his rushing, though. 9 rushes for -9 yards. That's not a very good total there. Luckily, he's not a running back. The previous year, 22, he did 13 games, 18 receptions, 167 yards, 3 touchdowns, 7 rushes, 21 yards. Jeez. Yeah, guys, you heard that correctly. Less than 200 yards the year before total. This was his 5th year. He finally got things rolling. And again, South Carolina schemed him into fruition. They realized what he could do well and what he couldn't do well. And they utilized what he could do well. He's got good size. He's athletic. He's great at contested catches. He's also a good punt and kickoff returner. So another thing we talked about with that kind of, need there potentially for some teams there. But the cons, again, didn't accelerate until the 5th year. Very, very raw route runner. And here's where the scheming part is. He is horrendous against press coverage, guys. And they moved him around the field left and right to avoid press coverage as best they could. And that's part of why he did so well. Because if you put him on the corners that didn't press as well, or if you moved him around at that point to try to get him off corners entirely, he's going to do very well. That's not going to work in the NFL. Now, the question is, can you teach him to deal with press coverage better? He's got the size. So, to me, this is that 50-50 shot of, is he coachable or does he just suck at it? And again, if he was coachable and I thought I'm seeing improvement towards the year, to be honest, he'd be much higher up because I really like his tape. I really like what he can do. But I can't ignore the fact that he is horrible against press coverage. And if you can't do press coverage in the NFL, you're going to be in some trouble there. So I think he might be a good third receiver at that point there. as the worst case scenario, because then you hope you can pop him in the slot, maybe put him on some little guy that won't, you can't press him. You know what I mean? You put him on a little corner like that, 6 foot and 180 pounds. Good luck pressing a guy who's 6'1", 221 pounds.
Oh, you poor nickel corners.
Yeah, that's where you're at. But if you could
40
teach this
pounds.
guy, but if you can teach around the press issue, he's got a potential to be a really good receiver in this league. It's all a matter of how bad is his press coverage issues. Is it coaching or is it just he sucks at it? Because you can't outcoach everything. But that's the one thing. But it's a big thing.
Yep.
It's a big thing. It's like saying there's this great car. It's spectacular, except it has no brakes.
Sounds
kind
great.
of important.
How do I stop?
It's kind of important. That's where he's at there. So
I don't know about that. It's pretty to look at, but I ain't touching it then.
That's saying.
We're still talking about the
car.
That's
great. How do I stop?
Also, Xavier's everything that you said is 1,000% on the nose. Because if I'm a GM, I don't want him personally. I'm even if he was like together with Spencer Rattler, I don't want any part of it. But if he was going to be a project, he would be a very, very good project for someone like Seattle or the Rams or even Minnesota.
Seattle is.
See, I still think his ceiling.
Metcalf?
I think his ceiling is actually going to be is higher than Coleman, and that's the only reason I have him ahead of Coleman. I think I think his floor is also higher than him as well. Yeah, I think Coleman is one of those guys because of the route running issues. If he doesn't fix that, he's done. Whereas
I like it.
Leggett, you can move him around like they did in college and at least use him in certain scenarios. There's not this, the floor comes out and all of a sudden he falls out of the NFL.
I like it. Seattle might be the best move for him because you get.
Oh my God! Can Seattle stop getting receivers? Like how many receivers they need?
Well, that's the thing though is all their old guys are being replaced.
Needs to have that.
You say that they're old guys. Listen, they're not even that old.
They're not old. They're not old.
He feels like he's been in the league forever.
But he's been dominant since he came
27?
in. 4 years, 5 years.
He's 26 years old. He's not even 27. He's 26 years old. By the way, I gotta say too, when I went to the Pro Bowl this year, for those of you guys who haven't seen DK Metcalf in person, you always hear about how big he is. Oh my God! Like he looked like a linebacker hanging out with the wide receivers. That's how big he looked. Like it was insanity. Again, 6'4", 235. So you talk about a guy now who 6'1", 221. It's a decent size to him too. So I'm saying I think Leggett's got a place in this league, and it's a matter of
team like Seattle,
how good
he could be the Y3 and not have to worry about being the Y1.
Maybe Y4. Y4. Still got Jackson
Smith-Njigba. They would keep him in there for a year, and then they would get rid of Lockett's contract, and then they would be.
That's exactly what I was going to get at.
They restructured him this year.
Yeah,
that's exactly what I was going to get at. It's like they would pick him up, get a cheap deal, let him develop, and then get money or draft picks for Lockett or McCaffrey.
And whatever quarterback you put there in Seattle, it's like you got DK, you got Jackson, and now you got Xavier. You got two running backs in the back, and we got Lockett. Oh, come off the bench for you.
Yeah,
and they've always had a decent.
And Gino's probably going to start too. Like no matter what they do, Gino's probably going to start this year.
Yep.
Yeah, Gino definitely start this year. In my mind, I don't think there's a doubt in my mind that he doesn't start. So
unless they get up there in the draft, unless they can get someone.
I don't know. I don't see it happening.
If it's one of the top three,
Drew,
like if for some odd
one
reason,
of my key sayings. Never
you have a lot of them. Granted, you like saying granted a lot.
Never count Stinky Pete. He is
Stinky Pete's not there anymore.
Doesn't he still consult?
He's there, but he's not. He's there, but he's not there. Keep in mind, this was a Tom Coughlin situation. They kind of forced him out.
Yeah.
So you're giving him an honorary title, but how much is he actually going to be involved when you just kicked him out of the spot he wanted to be? He wanted to coach that team still.
Pete, hi, Pete. The fan base isn't going to like if we say you're fired. So we're going to literally pay you to shut the fuck up.
Yeah, that's basically what happened.
And draft for us.
I mean, the guy interviewed for the Charger spot and wanted it badly.
Yeah.
Like, trust me, this guy is not very happy with his franchise. I'm not sure how much he's actually helping at all behind the scenes anymore.
No, but also if you got into that situation and you want another job somewhere else, are you going to tank the team you're at to make yourself look terrible? Or
he don't care. He's gonna say, I wasn't there. Here's my resume. Look what I did for 15 years there.
That's like
and
no
then,
right
you know what? A lot of teams might look at it and be like, okay, you did a lot of things for that team. Won Super Bowl. What else did you do?
Well, I almost won another
one. Threw the ball on third down, jackass.
Only you had a really good, strong, short yardage running back.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. Next up here, we got another guy that I think is kind of underrated to a certain degree here because of what the offenses he was in here. So let's go off here with a little number 5, Troy Franklin. Well, you guys loved the cartoon version of Troy Franklin too, didn't you?
Yes,
I almost feel bad people that are listening to this later on audio because they hear that music nonstop and they have no clue what's playing in the background. Sorry, guys, if you're on audio land. This is why you got to come to video. It's more fun. But don't do that when you're driving to work. That's unsafe.
In America.
Unsafe. In Canada as well. You got icy roads. Worse. Yeah. Troy Franklin, 6'2", 176 pounds, soaking wet. The guy is like a pool noodle at that point. 21 years old. Last year, 23 games, 23 games. Last year, 23 season, 13 games, 81 receptions, 1,383 yards, and 14 touchdowns. Year prior, 13 games, 61 receptions, 891 yards, and 9 touchdowns. Now, if you guys remember, we talked about Bo Nix. We did our talk there with him. Bo Nix is the king of checkdowns, screens, short yardage. So when you got a guy like this who's a good deep vertical threat and succeeded in Oregon as one with Bo Nix as their quarterback, I really think this guy got held back a little by Bo Nix, to be very frank with you. And I see Andrew going, yeah.
He still had almost 1,400 yards.
Yeah, I think this guy is another guy who's underrated in this whole topic of receivers. You don't hear him talked about as a potential, first round pick. I think he's got that kind of talent. Good vertical threat, good release, good route runner, the stuff that you want to see. Cons wise, you would like to probably see him add a little bit of weight at 176 there. But again, you don't want to do it to the point where you ruin his speed. He's also not necessarily the best at tracking the ball at times there. Every so often, he just goes up for it and his hands are in the wrong spot from where the ball's going to be.
I do think you got the opportunity hands.
But I do think that's something that you could potentially teach. Maybe it's, half a second more you need to go back further because you're just not good at that, or whatever the case may be. Like, there's things you can teach on that. It's not that his hands aren't very good necessarily, though I will say he does have a small catch radius for his size at that point as well. Again, 176 pounds, but he's 6'2". So you expect a bigger radius than what he does have. But if you get a guy who's good at throwing the deep ball and you pair him up with Troy Franklin, this could be a fun part of an offense there. So I have him as a late first, second round pick at that point. Most places I see him as a second round pick at that point, but I do think if somebody else sees that potential, you could see somebody right towards the very, tail end of that first round go, you know what, this is the guy we should add. Maybe Kansas City, we talked about them. I still think Kansas City's going to look at a receiver at the end of that first round because it's so obviously their biggest need in that team. It's not even funny.
Yeah, it's going to depend on obviously where they sit, but also where it loops back around. I can see, Kansas City go late round, first round.
Yeah,
he
said it. It'd be interesting. It'd be interesting fit at that point for him there.
He was the early mock season talk of which superstar team would. People would say lose out in the playoffs in order to get a guy like this, but it'd be, like the Ravens, the Bills, the Chiefs. The Jets right now with Aaron Rodgers, any of these guys that get this guy, but those are the teams that want him now. Like these NFL ready to go, knows how to do most of these schemes and most of these systems and stuff like that. I wish that Chip Kelly would have gotten a job this year, and we have to wait until next year when he comes back into the NFL. Because if you want to see someone like Troy be utilized properly, you need an offensive coordinator or a head coach mind that is like Chip Kelly or is Chip Kelly. And if you want to get the best out of him, because, man, he is fast and he is fun.
Oh, yeah. And he's one of those guys that if he drops this second round, it would not shock me at all to see someone trade up and have that talk between day 1 and day 2 to trade up to get him. It's because it's going to happen if that scenario. He's that good.
Randomly too, just because I forgot that they actually traded Deontay Johnson to Carolina, is him on Pittsburgh. His personality too just screams Pittsburgh. Like him and Pickens together in the same locker room, or bickering at cornerbacks. Oh man, that would be fun.
The question is, can Russell Wilson throw that?
Russell or Fields, yeah.
Listen, I honestly would say that Fields might be the better quarterback at this point too. I still will say that. That's talking about getting 2 steals. 2 steals.
Being able to sit with Mike Tomlin might be the best thing for his.
I 100% was about to say the same thing.
Yeah,
I think Fields not playing this year coming up, sitting behind a Super Bowl winning quarterback to talk about his glory days and how he used to do everything.
Back in my day,
might make Fields
we used to throw the ball at the first yard line.
Back in my day, instead of running the ball first, we threw it 10 yards down the field.
Listen, God told me to throw the ball to Malcolm Butler and make his life just with riches.
Someone did I saw a cartoon, people do the NFL cartoons and stuff on TikTok and all. And someone did one, and it was it was Russell Wilson talking to Justin Fields, welcome to the team. First thing you do if you want to become a superstar, you got to find yourself a pop star or marry her quick. I'm like, what the
hell? One that was popular in the early 2000s.
Yeah. I say, is she even still recording? I haven't even heard anything new of her in forever, I think.
Probably does Christmas albums right now to try and get ahead.
Oh, my God. She's on a Hallmark movie somewhere. Probably. Brandy was in one last year. I saw on Netflix. I'm they're like Brandy. They used to use her last name even. I'm like, who's Brandy? What's her name? And then also the picture. I'm like, oh, it's Brandy. I'm like,
the Brandy, not Brandy. Oh.
Yeah, but you hear her last name and you forget who she even is because you just know her as Brandy. She was never Brandy, whatever her last name is. She was just Brandy.
Yeah.
So, all right. Now we're into the automatics in the first round. If you're not going to get these guys in the first round, don't even talk about them because they're going to be gone. There's no chance of these guys dropping whatsoever here. We got the big 3 left and one more here. So let's start it off here, the top 4 with Brian Thomas Jr. Oh, yes, there he is. The forgotten of the duo of LSU sometimes. And this is one of those scenarios where, again, we talked about Washington where we go, you know what? There was 3 really good receivers. There's a high-end quarterback there. Was it the quarterback? Was it the receivers? Was it a combination? And again, I'm sitting there saying it's a combination because you get 3 guys all succeeding at that point there. So obviously the quarterback has to be some of it. Here you go. Okay, Jaden Daniels out of nowhere has a massive season. Brian Thomas also kind of came out of nowhere. Nabers had a good season in 22. Brian Thomas came out of nowhere. This is one of those guys that I look at and go, I see why people like him so much. I watched the film and I like him a lot. But I go, was he so good partially because Jaden Daniels went nuts this year all of a sudden? Was he partially so good because Malik Nabers was so good people were double teaming and do whatever they could to try to stop him? And there's some question marks I have in this guy. But I look at the tape and it's damn good, guys. Damn good. 6'3", 209 pounds, 21 years old. This past season, 13 games, 68 receptions, 1,177 yards, 17 touchdowns. Talk about a TD machine there. 1 rush for -6 yards. The prior year, 13 games, 31 receptions, 361 yards, and 5 TDs. So you can see the TD potential there both seasons there. Both it's a good ratio there. But the yards difference is just massive there. Good size and strength, obviously, with him, speedy and obviously very good at yak there. The cons, again, wasn't the focus of defenses. And that's the one thing that scares me of drafting a guy in the first round that was the clear number 2 on his team in college, because that means he got covered by the number 2 corner. He didn't get the double teams. He didn't become the focus of who you were trying to stop there. If you now go ahead and draft him to be your number 1, he's never had to be a number 1.
Yep. And once again, I was going to say, when you go from college football to the NFL, it's a way different talent. So number 1s getting covered by number 1s in college sometimes don't develop the 2 number 1s in the NFL. Now, when you have the number 2 getting covered by number 2s and going to the NFL and getting covered by number 1s,
who does number 2 work for?
But how bad is he going to look?
I see this guy and I hear people talk about him, and they talk about him like an instantaneous number 1 for whoever drafts him. And I don't think that's necessarily a safe thing to say, because again, he didn't do it. And I'm not saying he can't do it, but you can't look at that as a definite.
But also, what this guy could be is, once again, we said before, he could be a Robin somewhere else. You don't draft him to be your number 1, but you take him, like, if you're on that Super Bowl run, and if you got the dude at your wide 1,
the Big Lebowski
is your wide 1. You take a guy like this at a cheap cost that gives you cap room to spend at other positions that you need to go on that Super Bowl run. This is a shot you take.
But here's the problem. You don't take that kind of shot in the first round. The first round is supposed to be this is my number 1 receiver.
Yep.
And
I hear you. But you could develop, if you have the right coaching, you could develop them into the number 1 coach, especially if they're sitting behind the dude.
Yeah. But that's where you have to have that confidence. You have to have that confidence.
Yeah, you have to.
And if you don't, you got to bypass it.
If he went to, like, say, the Vikings, that's a good place to be developed and have a better chance, right? If you're looking at
3,
if you're looking at him being the number 3 option, like, and being drafted,
it would be in that scenario because you have Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, so he's number 3 now.
And then the other, the other 2 places I was saying too, it would be the Bengals and the Lions. If you want him to develop, like, right off the bat kind of thing, and you can take a year and let him have some of his lumps, like Jameson Williams had for the Lions, like T. Higgins even had for the Bengals. Those are the places that you can go because they have 2, 3, 4 other options that they can go to, but they want you there for those big games.
Yeah.
Lions would probably benefit significantly from this guy. And the Bengals, because the Bengals are just pretty much the AFC version of the Lions.
Yep.
Just the other.
Minus the run game.
Touche.
I don't quite have the running back there. All right. We're down to 3, guys. We're down to 3, the final 3. It's the final countdown. We got number 3. It's back to Washington. It's back to Washington, guys. Everybody loves their apples. Odunze. Oh, yeah.
I like them apples.
I like them apples a lot, actually. This guy we're talking about guys that very well potentially right now could be a New York Giant coming up here. So pay attention, Giant fans. Odunze, 6'3", 213 pounds, 21 years old. Cheers, he can drink now. Last season there, 15 games, 92 receptions, 640 yards, 13 touchdowns, 2 rushes, 37 yards, and 1 touchdown. The year before, 12 games, 75 receptions, 1,145 yards, 7 touchdowns, 3 rushes, 6 yards, and 1 touchdown there. Really big, uses his size very well. Again, 6'3". That's tall. That's tall for a receiver. Talked about how DK Metcalf kind of stood out in the crowd there. He's 1 inch off. That's it. So huge catch radius, nice route runner, breaks tackles pretty well as well. The cons with him is mostly just his speed. You'd like to see a little more speed out of an elite wide receiver here. So it's interesting in the big 3 that we got here. So we start off with Odunze, who is like your number 1 possession type of receiver at that point. This isn't the guy that you're throwing at 45 yards down the field to make a big play. This isn't your guy that you're throwing a quick screen route to at that point. This is your consistent, I'm going to pick up 10, 15 yards, pop, 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 all throughout the game. That's what he is. And he really helps move his stick if you're doing that. I mean, that's like you're doing something right if you can keep popping off like that. And that's what he does. He does it at a very consistent base. Again, talk about the 1,640 yards, but he took 92 receptions to do that. So it wasn't like he was doing that like 50 receptions and he was doing 60, 70-yard bombs. This is not that kind of player. This is more of a possession style kind of receiver at that point there. One that I will say the Giants have not had a player at this type of caliber at receiver in a long time. And I'm still hoping, I'm still going like this, that the Giants somehow pull off Odunze in the first round and then go get Michael Penix in the second. I'm still hoping here. Or like we did in our last mock draft we put up on Twitter and Facebook there, we trade back to the end of the first to get Michael Penix Jr. Because you put those two together in the NFL, I'm telling you, something special is going to happen, guys. Something special is going to happen.
Yeah. Big time.
Rome is gonna if Rome gets to go on the other side of Chris Olave on the Jets, or if he gets to be on the other side, sorry, who's the one on the Jets? That's not Olave. Garrett Wilson.
You're talking about
yeah. And then if he gets to be on the other side of Olave on the Saints, those are the 2 wide receiving cores right there. If those were to happen, that if I was a quarterback, I want to be part of for the next 7, 8, 9 years, because him being a number 1 on a team like Carolina, awesome, cool. You're going to be essentially, the Mike Evans of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers before Chris Godwin got there. You're going to be the Tyler Lockett essentially of the Seattle Seahawks before everybody else got there for a little bit. But if this guy gets to go to a place where he is a 1A with another guy, we're talking generational offense out of these guys and possible abilities. Rome is that guy. And I loved watching him. I wanted Washington to win so bad, just so that he can push the whole Marvin Harrison Jr. narrative aside a little bit. And take it essentially like, this is my natty. This is me being the first overall wide receiver out of this. Obviously it didn't happen, and he's considered anywhere between the second and third with Malik and stuff. But man, his upside
the top 3, they're so much closer than people want to say.
Yeah.
Like I said, right now, Nabers and Harrison are going back and forth. Some people think one for the Nabers, one for Harrison. Rome's kind of thought of as a third. But
if you talk to a lot of these podcasts,
it's not much difference. You 1 to 3.
Yeah, it teeters back and forth.
Yeah, and I'll say this though, as far as the spots he's going to go, keep in mind he's going Arizona, he's going Chargers, or he's going to the Giants. That's probably where he's going.
No, him on the Giants would be fun too.
He's going to have to be a number 1.
Yep.
Less trades happen.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna less, yeah, or or Darren Waller doesn't retire, and all of a sudden becomes a unicorn people said he was last year.
I just need him for 1 more year for fantasy football, and then I'll go get him replaced.
You're gonna be disappointed, by the way. I'll say that I've heard some things online, and I'm not gonna say that they're substantiated or anything like that, but I've heard some whispers starting around that it's CTE is the issue he has.
I am going to trade him right now. Then, God damn it.
That's the issue. Then I understand walking away.
Yeah, makes sense. Then
the rumors I'm hearing. I just love the I love the whatchamacallit, the meme that was going around because Wesley Steinberg, I don't know if you're aware of that, who that is there, Andrew.
Oh my God.
He's a satire Twitter account that just rips the Giants all the time.
Okay.
So he did a thing on. He's like Darren Waller survived addiction, survived living in Las Vegas, but he couldn't take more than 1 year helping with Daniel Jones as his quarterback.
Dude, it was brutal. He's like so much respect for his personal and career. Survived playing in Oakland. Survived addiction. Yeah.
Messed up. But yeah, anyway, back to Rome. Again, Rome's going to be a top 10 pick. He'll probably go into top 6 if we're right about the quarterback, wide receiver thing that I think is going to happen there. And like I said, whoever gets him is going to be very happy. They're going to have no second thoughts whatsoever, even though he might be, I hate to say it this way, the leftover. Like whoever gets him, it might be because we got the third receiver. But it's a whole lot better than a lot of years. I'm telling you, these top three are going to be guys going to light up the NFL rookie year starting. There's going to be no learning curve. It's going to be lighted up right off the bat.
Yeah.
Yep.
Let's get into number two. Number two. All righty. And number two is, of course, Malik Nabers out of LSU. Now, I will say this. I had a little second thought on the 1 and 2 in this scenario here. Obviously, I think you all know who number 1 is now. I think that Nabers has the higher ceiling than Marvin Harrison Jr. does.
Yes.
I think that Marvin Harrison has the higher floor. And that's why I'm putting him there, because if I'm betting that type, I want the guy who I think is the automatic, and I hate to say a Dave Gettleman thing here, but the gold jacket kind of guy. Marvin Harrison Jr. is a safe pick. Malik Nabers is your I'm going for the gusto here kind of pick. 6 foot even, 200 pounds, 20 years old. Last year, 13 games, 89 receptions, 1,569 yards, 14 touchdowns, 1 rush, 1 yard. Prior year, 22, 14 games, 72 receptions, 1,017 yards, 3 TDs, 1 rush, 5 yards. Pro-wise, great burst upon catch. This is a guy that he has that ability that once he catches it, just takes off. Like whoever's covering him better be fast, or you better have a safety covering the top, because if he gets that one step on him where he can take it to the house, he's going to do it. Great at tracking the deep ball, good route runner. The only issues with him, size and strength. Again, 6 foot even, not the best height, but not the worst. 200 pounds. You want a little more weight at that point there. And I do see a little bit of trouble sometimes with the heavy press kind of corner at that point there in some of the games because of that. Can he work around it? Of course he can. Can he be a stud? He's going to be a stud. There's no doubt of it, guys. There's a con for everybody. This kid is going to be a stud. I'm telling you right now. And we talked about all these guys are a little bit different. Odunze, like I said, is more the possession type. This is the home run threat guy. This is the guy that if you want the Randy Moss kind of player, and I'm not going to say he's Randy Moss. I don't ever go and say that kind of stuff. But I'm saying if you want that guy that's the home run threat and the threat taken to the house every time he touches the ball, this is your guy. This is your guy. He's probably, in my eyes, the least safe pick of the three.
Yes.
But he's got the highest ceiling of all three.
Yes.
And that's where you kind of go, how much of a risk do I want to take at that point there? I can see this guy being...
If you guys are all baseball fans, this is like your Aaron Judge.
Yep.
He's the guy that's going to knock the ball out of the park. He's the guy that's going to get a high threat when he makes contact. But if he doesn't, he's not playing small ball. It's all or nothing. He's going to get you that 50-yard bomb with a touchdown, or maybe 2 yards. It's feast or famine.
And that's the reason why, if for some odd reason the Giants can't trade up for a quarterback, he's going to look very good at number 6 to the Giants.
And here's the other thing I want people to remember as well. We talked about this with schools. There are certain schools that are good at certain things. In Alabama, we said wide receiver. Guess who else is very good at producing receivers? LSU.
Yep.
OBJ, need to say more. I mean, if you look at the guys, Chase. Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, I mean, these guys are all coming out of LSU. Some of the best receivers in the league. You can actually say that LSU has probably produced in the last 10 years the best receivers at any other college. Yep. Alabama is probably number 2.
I throw Ohio in there respectively, but yeah.
Yeah, I can see it. I can see it. Jackson I'm looking at pure. It depends if you want to go quantity or quality, I guess, in that case, because Alabama produces a ton of them. But yes, Ohio State, while they produce less, has a higher quality of them. So I can give it time.
They got Harrison, obviously, that's coming out this one, but I do like Mbuka was supposed to come out this draft as well, but I don't think he wanted to be overshadowed by Marvin Harrison, so he's going to go back and get the natty this year with the rest of their payout that they've got there on the Ohio State roster.
Yeah.
And,
Oh, plus their offense did struggle a little bit at Ohio State. I think he wanted a monster year at that point to come out too as well. So he's hoping one more year, get it all rolling there. But yeah, like I said, Nabers is that guy, and like I said, he's going to be a stud. It's just a matter of, the floor to me is like an 800-yard kind of guy. The ceiling to me is a 1,500-yard kind of guy. Like he's got that kind of ceiling, guys. He's going to be a really good player. Put him in the right system, utilize his skills correctly, as is always the case with rookies. He will be,
And not only that, especially with the Giants, and I'm only talking from an outsider. I don't know how deep you guys have gotten into, the core of your team and all that kind of stuff.
We get really deep. Oh,
so deep.
You have the ability, no matter what, if you decide to go with Daniel Jones for another year, whether you decide to go with
bite your tongue, good sir, right there. Bite your tongue.
I actually wouldn't mind you guys going into the second or third round and grabbing Michael Pratt from Tulane, and then letting him sit for a year or two under that system. But with the defensive line that you have, and then the fact that you might be able to get a Justin Jefferson type of wide receiver to come in there on that offense, there's nothing to shy away from saying that the Giants could relive what it was 2 years ago. So
here's the problem with Daniel Jones. The big issue with him really is just the injuries. So to get out of his contract, we need him to stay healthy. For him to stay healthy, we need him to not hit the field. Because he's had 2 major neck injuries he's had now. He's had coming off an ACL issue at that point. And if he gets hurt, his injury guaranteed doubles his cap number next year automatically.
Oh, guys signed one weird contract.
No, but here's the thing, though. Here's the weird part, though. 2 years in, we're out.
That's fair. That is also fair.
There's pros and cons to it. Yes, we gave him way too much money. And hindsight is 20/20 on that. Thank you, Tampa Bay Bucks, because you guys got to learn a lesson from us. But what it boils down to it is we're out in 2 years. That's not that horrible of a deal at that point there in that respect. But I'm telling you right now, it's gonna be like a red shirt year for him. Like he's gonna not even dress some games even, because you already got at that point Drew Lock now. We're going to draft a quarterback. We have Tommy DeVito. Not that DeVito I expect anything except for him going like this occasionally.
DeVito had a nice year last year, but I don't expect the peppers to keep coming. But what you're going to see is Lock was always in the talks of him leaving Seattle to come to New York, that there will be a competition to start.
Yes.
So take that.
It's also Jones had an ACL tear later enough of the year that you can't even guarantee he'd be ready to start the year anyway.
Nope. Yeah,
it's possible, 100%. But you can't guarantee it. And like I said, I'm still on the Penix train. I want a Mike Penix Jr. to be a Giant so bad it's not even funny. I would even take a trade with the Lions if they wanted to give up Hendon Hooker at that point there and go that kind of route. There's other options out there. Like I said, we don't have to go pick up one of the top 3 because, again, I'm not high in the top 3 quarterbacks. I think Caleb Williams is going to be one of the biggest busts in NFL history, considering how much kind of hype he has. I think Drake May, coming from too small of a school, but a history of bad quarterbacks coming out of that school. And then you got Jaden Daniels, who's the only one I trust at that point. But again, it's 1 year he had. So how much do I trust that 1 year? But again, it's 1 year
That's
against
hard.
SEC. I would take the shot with him, but he's the only one of the three I would take that shot with.
Look how Joe ended up coming out of that exact same school and won a Heisman. And Jaden has way more mobility than Burrow. So and that's why I'm betting that he's going to the Commanders. I think the Commanders.
I don't dispute that at all. I think Drake May's going to drop, actually.
I do too. I think Drake May could possibly be the Will Levis of this draft.
He very well could. I'm telling you, if he's there at 6, I don't want him.
And
I actually think Michael Penix is a better quarterback, I think, than him. I really do.
Yep. And now if you're sitting there at 6 and Drake May hasn't been selected, that's where someone like the Raiders or the Broncos or even the Vikings, someone's going to get that fucking desperate and be like, fine, take 11 and 20, whatever.
I've actually seen mock drafts with the Giants trading with the Vikings in that exact scenario, taking their 2 picks for number 6, and then they're getting a tackle in the first pick, getting the quarterback, I think like a Penix or a Bo Nix at that point in the second pick, and then going in the second round, getting a receiver then.
Yep.
I've seen that. And I've seen worse ideas. I just don't like the idea of taking another goddamn tackle. We've taken too many damn tackles.
If for the odd chance that you guys still had Saquon Barkley, I would have thrown more of the Bo Nix talk in there, because obviously if you would have had Saquon for 2 years, you would have at least gotten that out of Bo Nix and then seen what else it could have been.
I just feel like he's a check down king. It's what he is. I'm not impressed with him. Like I said, I'll take. To me, it's almost like Penix and Daniels, and that's the only ones I like.
JJ, I don't think would have worked out, or wouldn't work under you guys this year. I think if it was under Dable's first year and he had the ability to run it his way, I think it probably would have worked out. But JJ is going to be a Viking, I think, through and through.
I think he's a game manager. I really do. I think he's such a I'm not going to draft a guy to be a game manager. I'm drafting a guy to be my QB.
That is also true. That's why Michael Pratt, baby.
I said I'm not against him or Spencer Rattler going to those guys in the third round at that point. Just give a competition base at that point, but we'll see what happens. Let's get on number 1. I think we all know who number 1 is. We've already kind of said who it's going to be. That's Marvin Harrison Jr. Let's get it. Look at that footwork. Look at that footwork, guys, in that video. You guys listening and not watching on YouTube or Facebook or anything, just missing out here. But yeah, that's Marvin Harrison Jr. That's what he does. And listen, we hear about it a lot in acting in Hollywood about the Nepo babies. There's a Nepo baby for you. Like this guy, you don't think from day one he popped out the womb with being trained by his daddy had to be the next great wide receiver. Probably Peyton Manning coming over when he was 5 years old, throwing the ball and stuff like that. I mean, this is, again, I'm not going to knock somebody for having that kind of opportunity in their life, because Marvin Harrison Jr. has done what he could with those opportunities, and that's a credit to him. How many times you see these guys, like we talked about Brendan Rice at that point? Do you think he didn't have the same opportunities that Marvin Harrison Jr.? I mean, granted, Jerry Rice was already retired for some years at that point when he was born, whereas Marvin Harrison Jr. was born when his dad was still playing. There's some of a difference there, but he's done what he had to do, and he did what he had to do to put that respect on the junior name at that point, and then sit there and say, hey, I'm just as good as my dad. There's some people even saying he could be better because of the size difference. He's 6'3", 209 pounds, guys. Yep. He's bigger than his daddy is at that point. He's still just 21 years old. Last year, 12 games, 67 receptions, 1,211 yards, 14 touchdowns, 2 rushes, 26 yards, and a touchdown. Year prior, 13 games, 77 receptions, 1,263 yards, 14 touchdowns, 2 rushes, 32 yards. Very similar numbers. But if remember, we talked about this a minute ago. Ohio State's offense was not the slam dunk offense it typically is at that point. There was definitely some growing pains. Obviously, new quarterback and all that kind of fun stuff. They've lost a ton of receivers in the last 2 years at that point there. And whether Jackson Smith, the Jigma, Garrett Wilson, all these guys will all be leaving the door at that point there. Marvin Harrison was basically being double, triple team the entire damn season at this point there. But he still had a damn good season.
So over 1,200 yards.
If you're looking for the safest pick in the entire draft, this is probably it. Marvin Harrison Jr. Now, again, I don't think he has as high a ceiling as a guy like Malik Nabers does, but he's got the highest floor. This guy is going to be a stud in the NFL. There's not a single doubt in my mind at that point. The thing is, where does he stop? So, like we talked about Rome being a possession guy, Malik Nabers being a home run guy. This is the kind of tweener. He does home run threats at times. He does possession kind of roles at times at that point. And he does plays both well. But he's not as good a possession as Odunze is. He's not as good a home run threat as Nabers is. I think he's a guy that maxes out like 1,300 yard kind of seasons at that point there. I don't think he'll ever reach the 1,600 yard kind of roof that I think a guy like Malik Nabers has. But I think he's guaranteed to be a 1,000-yard receiver in this league. And that's the difference. And that's why I put him at number one. He's the safest bet.
So with what you were saying there about like him being, I agree on that. If he just goes and, he's partnered with Gardner Minshew, you're going to get a 1,200-yard season out of him and probably like 17 touchdowns, and everyone's going to talk about that the same way we talked about Devonte Adams with Aaron Rodgers.
Mm-hmm.
If you got to partner him, and the three big partnerships I bring up with regards to it, when Stafford had Megatron, that's all you fucking needed.
Yeah.
When Brady had Randy Moss, respectively, that's all you fucking needed until you got to the finals. And who'd they play? Exactly.
The Giants.
Exactly. Same thing with Mahomes and Tyreek Hill. Respectively, that's all you fucking needed. Now it's changed to the Travis Kelce area because that's all he fucking needs.
Oh, it's not all he needs. That's why they're trying to get drafted a receiver in all fairness.
Respectively, they won the Super Bowl with it.
I know, yeah.
So, but
it
my
definitely
thing
wasn't
is,
as foregone a conclusion as.
No, exactly. So my thing is, if he's about to go, to a couple places, but if he was to get a quarterback like a Gardner Minshew or the Drew Lock that we had talked about, respectively, you're gonna get you're gonna get 1,200 yards, like the 17 touchdowns. You put him with Kyler, and I'm not saying that Kyler is anywhere near what Stafford and Brady and Mahomes are, but Kyler is a really good fucking player. And Kyler has shown that he has the ability, especially when he had D-Hop, to be a very good fucking player. You put Marvin Harrison Jr. with someone like Kyler Murray. You put Marvin Harrison Jr. with someone like, Aaron Rodgers in this league right now, for example. That right there becomes what Peyton and his dad had, what all the other guys I said had, is those two right there are who you plan for on Sunday, and everything else doesn't fucking matter, because if you can't stop the first thing on the board, nothing else is going to be stopped either.
Yeah, and what I find interesting in this whole thing, again, if we're right in the quarterback, wide receiver thing here at that point, you go Arizona, the number one, want to take the wide receiver.
Yep.
It wouldn't put it past Arizona to say, I want the home run threat. That's an Arizona move.
Also true.
And that would put him in with Justin Herbert and the Chargers.
Which would still be a very, very
That's probably
nice
the best
there.
place for him. Let's be very frank here. If you had to pick between the quarterbacks of whoever the hell the Giants have, Justin Herbert or Kyler Murray, I mean, listen, I think a lot of people aren't, I wouldn't say down, but they're a little less high on Justin Herbert the last year or so than they've been in the past.
Mm-hmm.
He's still got a hell of an arm.
Still
have a hell of an arm, and that's way to go ahead with him. So let's go through real quick the pros and cons too, because we kind of skipped that over there. So pros: vertical threat, athletic, tracks the ball well, works the sidelines very well. We saw in that little video that we had at the beginning. Keep in mind, in college, it's 1 foot. It's not 2 like it is in the NFL. So that was a catch. Yak ability. Cons: depends on his finesse. And what I mean by that is he's very good at specific fast moves and stuff like that. And that's one question I have in the NFL is, does that change a little bit? Because as good as those finesse moves are in college, again, like we said, everything goes down a little bit more difficult there in the NFL. If those finesse moves don't work quite as well for him in the NFL, he's got to figure out something around it. But I think he will. There's not a doubt in my mind he will. Like I said, this is as close to a surefire bet as you get in there. This is that gold jacket. This is the guy that's going to go in the Hall of Fame one day kind of thing. Which I wonder how many father-son combos have there been in the Hall of Fame?
In baseball, I know there's one for sure.
Yeah, I can't think of any in football. This might be the first one.
Oh, the Mannings.
Is Archie in the Hall of Fame?
I believe Archie.
I don't think he was.
I think he's in there for this.
I got to look it up now.
Yep. Is Archie Manning a Hall of Famer? Either that
no,
or
he's not.
No, he's not.
I
Okay.
don't think he was.
When I'm seeing Peyton's got the gold jacket on, Archie doesn't, and they always wear the gold jacket there at that point there. So
there's just the brothers.
And we'll have the Manning brothers soon, probably.
Yep. Wow.
Oh, I said it first. He said yeah first. Listen, Eli's going in. You can't even stop it.
It's funny because I had this debate on my show a while back when I had some of the other guys on, and it was we had the Phillip Rivers, Ben Roethlisberger, Eli Manning debacle, and it was Ben is a for sure, Phillip Rivers is the meh, and Eli is we can't figure out.
He's gonna make it because of the 2 rings. I'm telling you.
I was about to say,
right or wrong, it's gonna happen.
I agree.
Like it, you put a ring on it.
Right or wrong, it's gonna happen. So I looked it up real quick to see father and son Hall of Fame in the NFL. There's only 2 of them, and neither one of them were players. One of them was a Giant.
Oh.
Let's get the Giants part of NFL greatest history here. Tim Mara and Wellington Mara.
Maras.
And the family that they married into.
Lay it on me.
The Rooneys. The Rooneys. Art Rooney and Dan Rooney.
That makes sense.
So, yeah, it's the only father-son combos in the NFL Hall of Fame. So that'd be interesting. It'd be like a historical thing. Maybe like the proudest moment as a dad. Like you wearing your gold jacket, you're putting the gold jacket on your son at that point.
Right?
That would be dope.
Like seriously, break out the Kleenexes in about 25 years when it happens, guys. I'm telling you.
Well, there's a few of them that might happen even this draft. Like Trottier Jr. is in this draft too, and I'm like, man, can you go? And I know maybe a little bit biased for you guys, but I'm like, can you go to Philly? Like, please.
No. I want Philly to get all bums.
I also, it is fair. I Buccaneers bias here too, so I don't necessarily like these.
So. All right, Giant fans. So that ends it here for our 20 top receivers here. We'll be back again Wednesday. Wednesday, we're talking tight ends, guys. And it will not be the 2.5 hour run this has been trying to get through 20 receivers here. We have only 10 tight ends. And let me put it this way. The tight end group is so thin that some of these guys are like 5th, 6th round kind of guys when you're going 10. That's how thin that position is this year, guys. But I was determined to find 10 to have a top 10 at least for you guys. The only position I'm ever okay with going top 5 is center. That's it. Any other position, I need at least 10.
Yeah.
Well, actually, and kicker punter if we do any kicker punter discussions. We'll see. Right now, the way we're scheduling things, we might actually
Taylor from Iowa this year.
We're a little ahead of schedule. We are a little ahead of schedule. We might be able to do it this year. So, Andrew, before we get going, do me a favor. Let everybody know where they can find all your work.
You can find me, North Sports Dynasty, usually every Friday. I try to go live every Friday. I got some articles being written on NHL Trade Talk and Trade Talk Sports, so you can go check those out. I also have the Foobs Nostalgia Show coming out here pretty soon, where it's going to be all about movies and pop culture and TV and all that kind of fun stuff. I was begged basically to do it, and it's been a passion project of mine for a while, so I said, finally, let's fucking do it. So look towards the beginning of May for that. I'm going to be diving deep into that pretty soon here. So that's all the stuff I got coming in. That's where you can find all my stuff. And also shout out to you, gentlemen, for having me on tonight. Appreciate it.
No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Especially, like I said, we're at 2 hours and 40 minutes we're up to now. Woo!
We just ran a marathon.
My fiance is literally just like, when can I have a damn dab? And I'm like, you can have a dab whenever you want. Come on down, say hi to the guys and stuff like that.
Yeah, she can come on down.
No, she's hiding somewhere. So
my wife's probably asleep at this point. It's almost midnight. I mean, so all right, guys. Again, we'll be back on Wednesday doing the tight ends here for you. We're also doing tackles on Thursday. So we're doing top 15 tackles. We're going to do on that one there. So trying to keep it realistic so we're not another 3-hour ride here. But we have so many wide receivers we had to go over. It's such a big, exciting group. Like I said, we didn't even get into the 5th, 6th round guys. That's how crazy. We didn't even
talk about Jacob Cowing from Arizona. Like, I know. What?
I know there were so many more people we could have added onto this list. I could have done the top 40 probably and still been like guys all being drafted. Like that's how good this class is, guys. So enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. Hope you guys enjoyed the ride with us and appreciate you guys sticking in. Listen, I can see the count of how many people are watching live, and I got to say, the count did not change too much throughout the entire program, guys. So you guys were listening in pretty much the entire time. That is freaking awesome. Thank you very much for that. If you haven't already, hit that like, hit that subscribe, and tell a friend. Listen, you probably have somebody else that's just like us that just loves football, can't stop talking about it, can't stop looking at it. And, they probably enjoy it too. So send it over to them as well. Appreciate you guys. Again, see you guys Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to talk tight ends. And Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to talk tackles. Unless anything big happens trade-wise, so that we might adjust. And that happens occasionally there. So appreciate you guys listening in as always. And Andrew, if you want to join us in with this party, you can feel free to go ahead. I know you're a Bucks fan, so you don't have to do it. I'm not going to force you to do it here, but if you want to join us in with the Go G-Men, you can be.
Nope, I'm out.
So appreciate you guys always for listening in there and watching. As always, we are live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter /X, Twitch, Instagram, though I forgot to hit the Instagram button this time. So sorry, Instagram people, you didn't get us this time. And of course, Rob's favorite, my LinkedIn profile. And of course, we're always on afterwards the next day on all the audio podcast platforms, Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon, all the fun ones there. So appreciate you guys watching and listening in as always. And as always, Giant fans, go G-Man! Go G-Man! G-Man and masters of the universe.
Thanks for listening to Two Giant Goofballs, a New York Giants podcast. We appreciate your support.
Thanks so much.